Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you today to the Housing and Social Wellbeing Committee. Firstly, I'll introduce the top table. To my left, we have Councillor Jack Welsh, and we have Councillor Sheila McCall. I have Barbara Renton, the Executive Director of Communities, and to my right here, I have Adam Taylor from Community Services. Can I ask Adam to confirm any apologies received and to take a roll call for today's meeting, please?
We have apologies this morning from Councillor Forbes. He's been substituted by Councillor Duff. The majority of members are actually in the chambers, with 4 joining us online. I'll just ask the 4 joining online to confirm whether they're actually in the meeting. So, Bailey Brock.
Present.
Councillor Duff.
Present.
Councillor Frampton.
Present.
And Councillor James.
Maureen, present.
All members are present, convener.
And after everybody's turned their hearing aids down a little bit, we can move on. Can I remind councillors and officers to join us virtually, that you can get my attention using the chat function. Do that in the chamber as well, but I do accept list of hands, but it's easier in the chat. Do you have any declarations of interest for this meeting? No, no declarations of interest. So item 3 is the minute of the previous meeting. Can we agree the minute of the previous meeting of the 25th of October 2023? Agreed? Agreed. Right, thank you very much. Item 4 on our agenda is the police and fire reform, local scrutiny and engagement. And at this committee, we will have the fire and police 6-monthly performance reports. Firstly up is the Scottish Fire Service. So can I ask Senior Officer Jason Sharp and Group Commander Serge Kabamba to introduce the report, please?
Good morning, everyone. I'm pleased again to attend with Serge to present and be scrutinised on our 6-monthly performance report. Before I hand over to Serge to talk through the details of the report, I thought it's worthy of raising a few matters. Ourselves, as other are, we are fully supported in the ongoing 16 days of activism to end gender-based violence campaign throughout our service and beyond. On performance, we as a service remain committed to working with partners to improve performance within community safety. As part of that approach, we held a seminar yesterday with community safety members for across the 3 local authority areas within the Tayside area to review how we as local partners support and deliver on objectives set out within each of the local improvement outcome plans. This is a really helpful session yesterday. So basically this review has seen the safer community managers for each local authority area come together to deliver a series of presentations specifically designed to explain where the pressures and challenges are for them and us and how they deliver services in line with that LOIP. These presentations were followed by a workshop to discuss the part we as a fire and rescue service can play and better understand how we provide the most efficient and effective support to the local service providers and third sector organisations. I think I stepped into that meeting as well yesterday to see how that was going, and I think what it also did ensure that local authority safer communities teams understood the wide-ranging involvement we currently have across a number of identified risks, which historically may not have seen us having influence or ability to assist with, including drug and alcohol misuse, self-neglect and hoarding, corporate parenting and employability, to name just a few. We see these types of interactions with our partners as key to ensuring we remain focused on delivery of services and a means of maintaining good situational awareness of local pressures and risks. On challenges, we've previously discussed that we've established a Strategic Services Review Board, which is currently reviewing our service delivery, corporate services, including where we can share services with other sectors. As you will be aware, the budget challenges to the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, we are now preparing a series of public consultations and engagement sessions on what changes we may potentially need to make. It will be my desire to offer separate sessions for elected members, local authority teams, etc. as we move forward. Just recently, looking at Shona Robertson's recent announcement, only solidifies the challenges coming the way of the entire public sector. I've previously discussed our local plans and how we have been reviewing our local plans and look to bring that back to a future scrutiny meeting for your feedback. The board, so the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service Board and Strategic Leadership Team, have paused the next stage of the local plans due to the fact that we were going out for consultation on potential changes to our delivery model due to budget challenges. We were advised that we shouldn't go to consultation on two matters at the same time, hence the slight delay. Just wanted to make sure you're aware of that. So until we know for certain the outcomes of the Strategic Services Review Programme, our engagement on a new local plan will be paused due to that decision. Hopefully that's been a helpful update. I will take some questions on that at the end, but for now I'll hand over to Serge to talk through our 6-monthly performance. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I trust you've all had the opportunity to review the report that was submitted for Q1, Q2. Therefore, if I can just take you directly to page 5 of the report and our performance summary and KPIs. So if we begin with HI1, you'll note there was 56 accidental dwelling fires reported within the first 6 months of the year. 7 of these were limited to the room of ignition and required a hose reel or extinguisher. The main cause continues to be cooking, and main human contributing factor being distraction, and that's relatively consistent across previous performance reports. Unfortunately, there were 2 ADF fire casualties that proved fatal. This is an increase in the previous reporting period and against our target of 0 fatal casualties. And we also had 11 ADF non-fatal casualties within that reporting period also. In partnership with the Warm Space Initiative, our community safety advocates and community action teams are providing fire retardant blankets and bedding to those that require them, as well as fire safety guidance for heating the home safely as we move into the winter period in an attempt to reduce such incidents. We've also been undertaking risk recognition training with carers and professionals across Perth City, which has gathered pace, and it's been delivered to approximately 92 carers and professionals. Outside of Perth, there's been 14 community nurses also trained in risk recognition training from Blairgowrie Cottage Hospital, and moving into 2024, we will also be delivering hoarding and self-neglect input to those same partners as well. On to HI4, there was 15 non-domestic building fires. That reflects a decrease on the previous reporting period, of which we had 19. And at 6 of these incidents, firefighters were required to extinguish the fire using a hose reel or extinguisher. There was 0 non-domestic fatal fire casualties and 0 non-domestic casualties also recorded during the period. And that's clearly welcomed, and a reduction, as I mentioned, over the previous period. Now, in line with our fire safety enforcement plan, our enforcement officers continue to support local businesses, and that's really important to ensure that we can give timely legislative guidance and allow for any enforcement action to be undertaken where appropriate. There are no such actions currently being undertaken within Perth and Kinross. HI7, we attended 37 road traffic collisions, and that was to assist with scene safety or to extricate occupants trapped as a result of the collision. That's a decrease in comparison to the previous period. And of the 37 incidents we attended, there were 9 that required a technical extrication to release the casualties. Moving on, just to note that of those 37 incidents we attended, again, unfortunately, there were 4 RTC fatalities and there were 30 non-fatal casualties. As part of the Perth and Kinross Road Safety Partnership, we will continue to work locally on reduction priorities to influence the behaviours of those who use our roadways in an attempt to reduce the casualties within Perth and Kinross. HI10, you'll note the SFRS were mobilised to 212 unwanted fire alarm signal incidents. That's a reduction of 134 incidents following the UFAS stakeholder consultation that was rolled out nationally. For context, schools within Perth and Kinross within Q1 and 2 last year were responsible for 58 activations. This has since reduced to 21, and offices were responsible for 19 mobilisations during that reporting period, which has been reduced to 4. So a significant decrease in the attendance of such incidents. HI 11 and 12, there were 16 deliberate primary fires reported and 57 deliberate secondary fires reported. That is an increase, and therefore we are showing red against that performance indicator. The incidents themselves were spread across all ward areas within Perth and Kinross, however 33 did occur within Perth. And we've adopted a targeted approach as we continue to work with local schools alongside national campaigns to reduce this unacceptable and antisocial behaviour. I'll just move on to Appendix 1, which is Community Safety Engagement Programmes. This section details within the report the initiatives that are undertaken within Perth and Kinross in partnership to promote fire safety, provide a community safety message, education, training and support. And I've just put in a selection that you will no doubt have cast your eye over previously of some of the activities that have been undertaken within the area. Appendix 2 just takes us on to notable events or incidents. We attended 1,127 incidents within Perth and Kinross, some of which had a serious impact on members of our community and their families. And although Storm Babette occurred just out with the reporting period, given the impact within Perth and Kinross and involvement of crews, I have included it within this report. So you'll just see a couple of images there taken from around the Tayside area, but it was an excellent example of working in partnership and drawing on the resources that are available as a national fire and rescue service. There were crews deployed to support partners and other agencies, including swiftwater rescue teams from Perth, Ayrshire, Fife, Aberdeen and Stirling, who undertook a number of rescues and evacuations within that 48-hour period. Also mobilised were flood response stations from across Perth and Kinross, including Comrie, Blairgowrie and Aberfeldy, who supported teams from Aberdeenshire and with the assistance of Scottish Ambulance, Police Scotland, Coast Guard and RNLI, affected a number of challenging rescues and evacuations. So it was just to give you a light touch on incidents and performance summary. Happy to take any questions as they are presented.
Thank you very much, Serge. Our first question today comes from Bailey Chrisahan.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Jason and Serge, for your report. Firstly, just a comment. I find it strange when we have a target for accidents and deaths. I'm not sure if there's any other word you can use in there, but we shouldn't really have it as a target. My question is on statistics HI 8 and 9. In the table on page 5, you've got it as a reduction in HI 9, but when you look at the graph in page 9, it's actually an increase on the last year. And can I ask about the fatalities and the non-fatalities? Are they any of those on the A9, or whereabouts were they? And if so, were they on undual stretches of the A9? Thank you.
Thanks for your question. I can see, I can see that that's clear an error on the table. The previous reporting period was 25 for the non-fatal RTC casualties, and this is 30. So you're correct with that. Regards the target, as part of the reporting process and to ensure that we're able to be scrutinised, there is a requirement for KPIs, and previously that target that I referred to being 0, we actually had a number against that. I can't recall what it was exactly, but it was a low figure, because some of these events, accidents, regardless of the work that we do in partnership, can be challenging to totally mitigate. So the reduction in that being 0 is our ambition. We look to have 0 fatalities or casualties as a result of either accidents or fires within the area. And RTC fatalities that occurred during this reporting period within Perth and Kinross, they were quite varied on this occasion. There was one, I believe, that occurred on the A9. However, I'm not sure if it was dualled or undualled. I don't have that level of detail.
Councillor Leishman.
Thanks very much, Convener. And with your permission, can I ask 2 questions? They do naturally follow on. The first one is, thanks very much for the report, gents. Good morning. Can you tell us how many incidents since the UFAS reduction policy was implemented have come in as UFAS and not received an initial response, but subsequently turned out to be fire incidents?
Thanks for your question. I wouldn't have those figures. I can tell you how many incidents we've attended that were UFAS. I can tell you how many incidents we've attended that were fires, but I don't have that detail. It's not even something I think I could report on with any accuracy at the moment. But it is something I could look at, speak to our data services team and see if I could get that information for you.
That's great. Thanks very much. I appreciate that. And following on from that, I assume that the job at Cameron's Garage initially came in as UFAS. How long did it take for pumps to leave Perth Station, and how long until they attended the fire at Cameron's? And would the response have been different if the UFAS policy hadn't been changed so that SFRS don't respond to non-sleeping risk fire alarms until it's a confirmed fire?
Again, I don't have specific incident details, so that's something that I would have to come back to you separately with.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Councillor Barrett.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Maybe come back to Councillor Leishman's question, because I don't know whether we're getting UFAS and automatic fire alarm signals mixed up. Because if it's a UFAS, there wouldn't be a fire in my reckoning anyway. But my question was on accidental dwelling fires. The performance there is fairly steady, although at 56 fires for the period, it is the highest number in the previous 3 years. In February 22, the linked fire alarm legislation came into force, but I see that we're still only got 2/3 of the fires with fire alarms fitted, and in just over half where they actually worked. Now, I know that the linked fire alarm legislation had a kind of soft launch, but we're now coming up to 2 years after the launch, and I just wondered, what preventative activity and what comms activity are Scottish Fire and Rescue Service doing to increase the installation of linked fire alarm signals?
Okay, so regarding the linked fire detection, previously, before that legislation came into place, we fitted battery-powered smoke detection that generally wasn't linked unless deemed appropriate, and it was kind of a blanket approach that was utilised by the service as part of our home fire safety rollout. The decision following the linked legislation being implemented was to focus on high risk. So the population that through various factors, whether it was deprivation, mobility issues, identification from partners, were deemed as being a higher risk than the average member of the community would be provided with the linked detection. So we've moved away from the kind of focus of just that blanket approach to a more targeted approach, which is seen as more beneficial, and that's been carried out across the country and other fire services nationally.
Okay, thanks very much for that. I appreciate the need to focus on in a targeted fashion. Is there any national awareness campaign refresh or anything going to be conducted by Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, particularly in the run-up to Christmas? Or is there anything that you know of that the Scottish Government are doing?
Yeah, well, we continue to engage through social media, through partners, as I commented on through the performance report itself. We are working with partners around recognition training. We are utilising all engagement opportunities to educate around home safety, that being heating the home safely and cooking. And we're also providing fire retardant blankets and bedding as well to those individuals that need them. But we continue to deliver home fire safety visits. And also our community safety teams are very active, delivering that message through partnership, through social media campaigns, and the service as well. As we move towards Christmas and the colder winter periods, we'll target that message to reduce accidental dwelling fires throughout, which is generally a historic increase around that period as people use alternative means to heat their homes. So there's a number of work streams there, and I hope that kind of gives you an idea of some of the broad range of work that's been undertaken across the service.
Thanks very much.
Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, convener. I have two questions. Are you happy to me just ask one? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Serge. My question relates to page 14, specifically the HI11 and HI12, the deliberate primary fires and the deliberate secondary fires. You say that there were no trends identified. I was just curious to know, I mean, what sort of trends might you have expected to see there? Thank you.
Yeah, so the reference to trends could be, well, any trend really. I mean, it could be a location, it could be a group, an age group. Generally, we'll look at where the fires are occurring, what time of the day they're occurring, if there's any other kind of influential factors involved. Is there any work that we can do to reduce that quickly, that require more visible presence, for example, where we'll tie in with community wardens? Does it require us to go into schools if it's within a local, catchment area, if you like, and carry out those kind of highlighting the antisocial behaviour aspect, which is what we've begun doing with the fires that occurred within Perth City. It's all part of that targeted approach of trying to identify what the causes are and deal with those directly.
Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much, convener. First of all, I'd like to thank the fire service for their help during the recent floods at Medvin. It was very much appreciated at the bowling green and at the householders next door. Thank you very much for that. My question is on the table HI1 regarding fires. You said there was quite a lot of incidents regarding cooking. Could you tell me, for instance, now what you're finding regarding lithium batteries? Because obviously there's a lot of reports about them. Are you finding, bigger increases in that problem? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the increase in use in lithium batteries is a problem worldwide, and it's one that we are working to identify best practice and how we can deal with these type of incidents. Relatively early on in their introduction, however, and the technologies that are available to deal with them at this time, and we've not had any significant incidents involving lithium-ion at the moment within Perth and Kinross, but as its use increases, we have had incidents elsewhere within the Tayside area involving public transport, for example, buses, cars, etc. But we do also have larger battery storage solutions that have been built as part of that carbon emission and climate mitigation as well. So it's something that we're well aware of, and we're working to identify appropriate and suitable means of firefighting.
Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Convener. And again, thank you for your report, and obviously thank you for the work you do for the community as a whole. Question back to HI2, the 2 fatalities in fire. Could you give us a bit more detail of what happened there? There's very little detail in the report.
Well, I mean, both incidents occurred quite recently. Both are still under investigation by our fire investigation teams. However, the fatalities did occur at separate incidents within Perth and Kinross, involving dwellings. There's not a great amount of detail unless you have specific queries around what I can answer with regards both of those.
I just wonder if there was a specific cause of the fire, or was it smoke inhalation, or were drugs, alcohol involved, or do we not know at this stage?
No, I wouldn't be able to comment on that at this stage.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Convener.
Councillor Duff.
Thanks, Convener. Just a comment first and foremost about the item on page 20 of the papers about a number of positive advances in relation to the training in a number of our on-call volunteer and stations in Highland Perthshire. I'm pleased to see the comments there about better preparedness for things like road traffic collisions, flood responses and wildfire responses in a number of outlying stations, a number of which are in my ward, and as I say, I'm pleased to see that's good news. My question is in relation to the table on page 17, which is going back to the HI 9, which is about non-fatal road traffic collision casualties. And the table there obviously shows a steady increase over the period from 9 in 2021, then to 16, then 25, then 30. And I'm not sure if that actually is an increase in casualties that are happening, or is it more to do with the number of incidents that the fire service are attending over that period? Just wonder if you could get some clarity on that particular statistic. Thanks.
The figures that are contained within the report itself are relating to casualties. The actual RTC incidents, those are within HI7. So you'll see they're relatively consistent in numbers, although they do fluctuate. So the casualties, there is a steady increase on casualties, and as you can see, fatalities over the past 4 years have varied from 0 to, as within this report, 4.
Is there any sort of analysis done as to why there is an increase then in actual casualties? You know, do we know if it's to do with speed or some other particular factor?
That's not really you know, something I'd be able to answer.
No.
Certainly not at the moment.
Okay.
As to why there is that increase in casualties.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Duffy, you may be able to re-ask that question of the police report when it comes up. They may have a more detail for you on the specifics.
Indeed, thank you.
Councillor Welsh.
Thank you, convener, and thank you, gentlemen, for the report. This question sort of builds on Councillor Leishman's observation around unwanted fire alarm signals. I think when we're moving to a new area and a new approach, particularly to delay a potential attendance to a fire, that it is important that we see that data listed, and I would suggest that going forward with the report that we provide an additional table to show this information rather than just being a piece of one-off requested information, because I think ultimately what we're trying to identify here is the impacts of a change in policy and a possible impact on that. It may be, for example, that where a fire is subsequently identified following an unwanted fire alarm signal, that in actual fact the delay causes potential increased risk to fire crews because the blaze maybe is more established, for example. So it's really just to ask that maybe there's an additional indicator that's regularly provided so that we can monitor the impact of that going forward. Thank you.
Serge, is it okay if I come in on that?
Yep, absolutely.
Thanks, Councillor Welsh. I think it's a really good conversation to have there. Just to give you a wee bit of context, we did have a board established to implement this Pan Scotland, and I think we are very much alive to any subsequent incident that Councillor Leishman discussed, and we went back to that board to discuss these in great depth. So what I think we'll do, rather than have a Perth and Kinross KPI, we'll take that back to the board and have a Pan Scotland discussion. I think it's a really good point, and whether we want to introduce that as a KPI across Scotland, because what we don't want to do is have different reporting in different local senior officer areas. So it's a very good point that we'll take back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor McCall.
Thank you. Thank you, convener, and thank you for the report. My question really is around the water safety education programme, which I think is very welcome. And I note that you plan to roll it out to more schools, up to 30. So I'm just curious, I think we have more than 30 primary schools in Perth and Kinross, so I'm sort of curious as to why just 30. But my other substantive question really is whether or not you're engaging with organisations that provide swimming lessons, or with Live Active Leisure, which is one of, in Perth and Kinross, our primary provider of swimming spaces to young people in particular, and whether or not there's any alignment with what children are being taught when they're learning to swim about water safety and the courses that you're delivering in the schools. Thank you.
And thank you for your question. Regarding the water safety education programme that's referenced within the report, that's actually been produced by a firefighter at Perth who took that initiative on and developed it in partnership. And as it's commented, that's been delivered up to 7 primary schools at the moment, 1,900 pupils approximately. Therefore, the reference to 30 primary schools is just that scaling up. Moving forward, I would expect that will continue to scale up until we are including all schools within Perth and Kinross, and there's even potential that can go further afield within PCAD or the Tayside area and possibly nationally as well. So it's not just going to be rolled out to 30 schools and we'll stop. It has proved to be extremely beneficial to date, and the feedback from schools and from head teachers has been excellent on how the children have interacted and reacted with information that's been passed on, and more importantly they're retaining that information. So really excellent piece of work that's been carried out. Regarding swimming lessons, that's not something that we have been involved in to date. I don't know if any other partners are involved in similar initiatives, but at the moment we're focusing on the awareness and the education piece around water safety and being safe around our waterways.
Thank you. I just think there's an opportunity there, even if it's just through literature, to make information available, even in our leisure areas where there is swimming or swimming lessons, so that at least people would know where to get more information. I think it's a very worthwhile programme. I'm very impressed that it's been done at all. So keep up the good work and thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Leishman.
Thanks very much, Convener, and also thanks to Councillor Barrett. But in reference to what he said earlier on, it's my interpretation that dwelling fires are at properties that are a place of residence, and I can only assume that no one stayed in Cameron's car garage. But my next question is, following withdrawal of Perth's third water pumping appliance, I understand that Perth's second water pump was sent on standby to Cullen, leaving Perth with one water pumping appliance. I now understand that Perth isn't getting left with one pump now and will get a pump sent through from Dundee, obviously negatively impacting service provision in Dundee and certainly not going to help SFRS achieve the decarbonisation and net zero targets it has. How often was Perth City left with a single pump while the second pump was standing by in RDS areas? And by changing this, does that not highlight how flawed the original policy was?
So regarding mobilisations, any standby mobilisation, that's taken on a instant by instant basis, and the determination made on what appliance will go and how that area will be covered by our operations control, based on what other instant activities ongoing and distances, etc. So there will be occasions where Dundee do get mobilised to stand by Perth for whatever reason. It can be instant activity, it can be that a Perth appliance is standing by another station. However, this is something that we keep under regular review, and as you said, the kind of core appliance availability within Perth is two pumping appliances. So that will always be what we aim to maintain within the Perth City area.
Councillor Leishman. Sorry, Councillor McPherson, I misspoke.
Thank you, Convener. My question relates to page 20 of the report, just where it states that Perth and Kinross on-call volunteer stations now have enhanced capabilities. I just wondered, what are those enhanced capabilities in terms of, what does that look like in terms of resources and training, or are there other aspects to that? Thank you.
Yeah, so with regards the enhanced training, are you speaking about Perth and Kinross or Perth?
I know it says on the report where it says Perth and Kinross on-call volunteer stations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so there's been a number of changes within Perth and Kinross affecting volunteer stations specifically. Now, I did reference these on a previous report when it came into fruition, but essentially the volunteer stations within the SFRS did not have the same capabilities as whole-time or retained on-call appliances, just due to the training impacts. Therefore, they couldn't attend a number of different incident types, such as RTCs. Within Perth and Kinross, due to the transport network and incident types that were occurring within these areas, we increased that capability. So we had those stations trained to the same levels as all the other stations around not only breathing apparatus, but also RTCs. They were provided with the latest powered rescue equipment, which is a replacement for hydraulic rescue equipment. So they have the latest equipment as well. And that's been really beneficial with our locality to the A9 and supporting local communities and neighbouring stations in attending and responding to RTCs effectively. So that's kind of specific to volunteers. We've also enhanced the capabilities of our retained on-call within Perth and Kinross. As is mentioned in the report, we now have 3 flood response stations, which is an enhanced standard across the service, and it sits to support the swift water rescue teams, one of which is based at Perth. So that's actually a higher level of training than some hold-time stations have, but really beneficial given the locality of Comrie, Blairgowrie and Aberfeldy. And we're also in the process of beginning to roll out wildfire specialist stations as well, of which Alyth and Pitlochry will be designated specialist wildfire stations. Again, receiving enhanced equipment and training in addition to PPE, which I've already received to support such incidents in line with the increase in wildfire as a result of climate change. So there's a number of different training aspects, equipment types and capability that has been enhanced over the last, I'd probably say 18 months within Perth and Kinross. That's really positive for local communities.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for that, Serge. Thank you.
Councillor Duff for your second one.
Thanks, Convener. My question's with regards to a comment on page 20 of the report at the very bottom, which talks about vacancies within the on-call stations, which obviously are the majority of stations within Perth and Kinross. My question there was just, where are we in relation to how many vacancies we currently have for the retained and volunteer crews, and how often does the lack of sufficient firefighters being available cause pumps to come off off the rota? Thanks.
Thanks for your question. With regards on-call recruitment and retainment, nationally it's extremely challenging, and it's challenging for a number of reasons. Changing demographics, the different ways in which we live and work. It can also be the locality of that station, and the affordability of areas can also cause challenges. However, it's something we are aware of. Within Perth and Kinross, we do a lot of work with recruitment. It's ongoing, it doesn't stop. So local stations, local management teams are continually engaging with local communities through open days, through attending events, social media, in an attempt to continue to highlight the importance of the on-call duty system. Because as you mentioned, it is a large duty group that covers the majority of Scotland, and especially within the more rural communities. So there are challenges there. There are tools we've got in place to support that. And one example within Perth and Kinross, following the outcome of SSRP, is we have utilised whole-time firefighters that are surplus at Perth to support on-call availability to maintain appliance coverage, and that's something again that's been in place for a number of months now and has worked to excellent effect in supporting availability and emergency response within, for example, the A9 corridor. And what it's actually achieved ties into Councillor Leesman's question about the number of times that an appliance from Perth has went into an on-call area. That has reduced from 22 occasions prior to the 4 weeks prior to implementation of SSRP to only 2 occasions in the 4 weeks after SSRP, because we were able to utilise those surplus whole-time firefighters to better effect rather than moving a resource out of Perth. So there has been opportunities there to support on-call in a different way, and that's something that we'll continue to look at moving forward.
Thanks very much for that. That's good to hear. And Chair, if I could just sort of formally record our thanks, I think, to all the on-call and retained firefighters who volunteer their services to keep us safe. Thank you.
I completely agree with you, Councillor Duff. It's a great way for people to serve their communities by volunteering to become a reserve firefighter. And I'd always encourage anybody thinking about it to contact the service to discuss it in more detail with them. It'd be a great thing to do. Councillor Brown.
Thanks, convener. I'm actually following on from a question and points raised by Councillor Leishman. We've obviously had some serious flooding in Perth and surrounding areas in the last month, which puts a stress or strain on the fire service with pumping out and rescuing people. I'm just wondering if the proposed changes have taken place, would that help have been compromised by not having enough equipment and manpower to help? And not following on from that, if there had been a secondary incident, which required attendance, would that have put tremendous strain on the fire service?
Yeah,
if those proposed changes have gone ahead.
Yeah, any spate incident can put strain on, I think all partners, to be honest. But the benefits of being a national service is, as I mentioned earlier, we've all drawn resources from across the country, which vastly increases what we have to respond to incidents from the legacy services. So there are very few incidents that will occur that will significantly strain the service, and it would only be if there were concurrent events, as you commented, but they tend to be spate isolated to a region or an area, which allows us to redeploy resources towards that area in anticipation of escalation, and allow us to ultimately resolve these incidents safely.
Councillor Leishman.
Thanks again, convener. Do individual firefighters get detached to RDS stations as lone workers? And if so, what safety procedures are there for lone working in place?
Firefighters do get detached as individuals, and they do that in line with our lone working policy and guidance. And there's also a framework and policy that's drawn up that supports that, with a number of protocols that they've to undertake, ensuring they're in regular contact, for example. But it's no real different from any other lone worker situation within the service, of which we have a number.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much, convener. During a recent fatal fire, I should say, in Mervyn recently, it was reported that the water pressure was not very good. Now, did this affect the rescue or the attempted rescue anyway? And have you looked into this? Is it a concern to you at all? Thank you.
Thanks. With regards to water pressures, they do vary and fluctuate around the country depending on the infrastructure. And what we generally do is, as part of our maintenance and testing regimes, our hydrant operatives and operational crews will test hydrants regularly, and where either faults are found or pressures found to be low, we will raise those issues and faults with appropriate authorities for repair or resolution. There are options at an incident should you incur a low water pressure to request that the flow is increased, and the water authority will attempt to increase flow in an area if it's required. But I'm unaware of that being raised as an issue with regards to specific incident. The logs, the reports I've seen did not state that was a challenge for crews in attendance.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
It looks like our last question will be from Councillor Leishman.
I've actually got 2 or 3, convener. Is that okay? First one is, based on the continuation of real terms budget cuts and ongoing recruitment and retention challenges, what is the likelihood of our more rural based fire stations closing, like Lead Hills in South Lanarkshire has?
Yeah, well, as we move into year 2 of SSRP, there will be further impact as a result of budgetary challenges. However, as has occurred at the station you reference, there would be the need for public consultation for any station closure. So it's not something that would be done without those appropriate actions being taken. However, I couldn't comment on what those decisions or outcomes will be.
Serge, I'll maybe come in on that, Councillor Leishman. I think back to my introduction, we are moving to a stage of consultation on any future options, in which case we'll bring all elected members in and discuss them as part of that public consultation. So currently there are no plans, but we will bring that to public consultation, Councillor.
Appreciate that. Thanks very much. Is Perth Fire Station one of the 14 stations in Scotland quoted as containing RAC?
No, Perth isn't one of the stations involved in that, no.
And while I was reading the Firestorm report, it states that staff morale is low and that since the creation of a single service, nearly 1,200 jobs have been lost. Can you inform elected members, just generally speaking, of what the exit process SFRS follow for staff that resign or leave the organisation?
Well, following any resignation or retirement, it's a similar process that's followed. And as I mentioned on actually activating that process, there is a meeting to discuss, any challenges, try and understand if there's been any issues that have been identified that have led to it, just to kind of get a better understanding of individuals' thought processes and why they've made that decision. So, I mean, it generally is up to the individuals who make these decisions, and people leave for different reasons. However, I don't think that will be different from any other organisation. But we do meet with them prior to them leaving and undertake that exit interview just to ensure that we can gain any organisational learning where appropriate.
That's great. And just lastly, following on from the London Fire Brigade Cultural Review report and the Firestorm report, what steps are SFRS planning to take to review policies and the culture of the organisation? I realise that it might still be very early days for that, but anything that you can shed light on that would be appreciated.
Absolutely, and these reports are ones that have been taken very seriously, and the service has committed to a cultural survey, which is currently been undertaken by members of our people team. They are and have been engaging with stations across all duty groups within the Perth and Kinross area recently, and we're also undertaking within the area a cultural survey, which again we're looking to potentially roll out just to get that better understanding of where we are locally and as a national service on the backdrop of some of the points that have been raised through those surveys in other areas.
Thank you very much. Do any members have any comments on the paper? Yep, right, Jack.
Thank you, Convener. It's just really to draw attention to Appendix 2. We'll say this is a committee that's very keen on processes and safety, but it's important just to note both the significant work done by the Fire and Rescue Service with the recent flooding in Perth and wider Scotland, and particularly draw attention to the good work of Kevin Stewart and also Ryan Witkowski in terms of the awards that they've received and the training that they've carried out. It's really important work, and I think it deserves appropriate recognition. Thank you.
And Councillor Leishman.
Thanks very much, Convener, and thanks very much to Senior Officer Sharp and Group Commander Kabamba for the report. And as always, I appreciate you answering all our questions. Fellow councillors, as I previously said before, by moving to a single service, nearly 1,200 jobs have been lost. And if there is no improvement in the budget allocation, as many as a further 780 are at risk. This also means more fire appliances will be withdrawn and stations will inevitably close. And as I've also said before, because of Scottish Government underfunding, SFRS needed to make £11 million worth of cuts in 23-24 and £36 million worth of cuts over the next 4 years. Although we had the strategic leadership team come here and tell us about their plans and try and describe it as modernisation, there is clearly nothing modern about having less firefighters and less appliances. How the service is being funded has led to firefighters in every community across Perth and Kinross being less safe, and there are more cuts to come. And the blame for that lies squarely with the Scottish Government.
Can we note the paper? Thank you very much. So the second part of item 4 on our agenda is the Perth and Kinross local policing 6-monthly report. And just before I asked Superintendent Phil Davidson, the Area Commander, Tom Leonard, to introduce this 6-monthly report, I just had to highlight that this is Tom Leonard's last meeting with this committee, following his recent move to a divisional role. I'd like to thank Tom for his substantial contribution to the work of this committee over the last few years and wish him all the best in his new role. We have restructured how the police and fires report to this committee to 6 monthly statistics with extra more detailed reports in between, and I've had a lot of support for Tom for making that move, and I think it's so far been a very successful move, and I hope it continues to be so under the new area commander. So thank you. For that, Mr. Hearn would also like to comment.
Thank you very much, Convener. Yeah, congratulations, Tom, on your promotion, and you'll be missed in Perth and Kinross. As Chair of the Community Justice and Safety Partnership, I'd like to pass on my thanks from all the partners for your support of the partnership and how you have made the delivery of services better for the public in Perth and Kinross. As can be seen in the report today, shoplifting is a huge issue for the city centre, and your attendance at the multi-agency meetings we have each month has been a big support for the businesses and for the others around the table, and your actions within that and the actions that your officers are taking is very welcome. I understand you'll still be in Tayside, so you'll still have an overview of what's happening in Perth. And on a personal note, I'd like to thank you for all of your support. You've helped me inside the partnership and out in your time in Perth and Kinross, and good luck in your new position. Thank you.
Tommy, Councillor Leishman would also like to comment.
Thanks very much, Convener. Yeah, I would like to add my congratulations to Tom as well, and thank him for the years of service, not just to this committee, but to across Perth and Kinross. It's been much appreciated. You'll be missed, and good luck for your future as well. Thank you, Tom.
Councillor Barrett.
Thanks very much. Convener had already expressed my appreciation of the work that Tom has done his time as our local area commander personally, but I think it's also important to do that publicly. I think echoing the comments that have been made by previous speakers, I want to thank Tom for the work that he's done at a ward level, tackling antisocial behaviour, particularly with Operation Stung, and engaging with young people across a number of locations in the city centre. I think the proactive and positive response that we received from Tom and his colleagues with regard to shoplifting in the city centre that Councillor Ahern has mentioned has made a big difference, increasing the police presence there and bearing down on shoplifting and crime in the city centre in partnership with a number of agencies. But particularly, I want to thank Tom for the work that he's done with me in terms of equalities and tackling hate crime in Perth city centre and work involving promoting equalities in Perth being a fairer, more equal place for everybody to live life well. So thank you very much, Tom, for that.
So after all that, Tom, it's now your turn to present your report. And maybe you'll get 20 difficult questions, the same as the fire service did.
Convener, sorry, Phil Davison, I'll maybe just pitch in to introduce, and I know Tom will want to take those really positive and comments in the grateful way that I know he always does. Morning, everybody. Great to see you all again. And before introducing our report today, I was going to make a comment about Tom and his temporary promotion to superintendent that took place from the start of this week as well. But that you've clearly done that for me, and I think some of the qualities that you've commented upon there is the valid reasons for his promotion. I guess just in terms of assurance to you all, Tom's temporary promotion is into a role around about operations, covering local policing and our community policing arm across all of Tayside. And Tom's role will move in to essentially be the line management role for the replacement area commander for Perth and Kinross. What this means through both Tom and myself is that you will continue to get that really clear and active support into Perth and Kinross, and my hope over the time that we've certainly both been in post is you know how committed we are to that and to clearly the communities across Perth and Kinross. For information, we have a number of really good potential candidates that will be getting interviewed next week for the role of replacing Tom, local area commander, and I will clearly get notification out to elected members once selection of a replacement has taken place, and to get introductions, and Tom and I will certainly support whoever that successful candidate is going forward. In the interim, we've got a really good team of inspectors, and Tom and myself remain fully available and in supporting oversight of all the activities in Perth and Kinross until we get that appointed area commander in place for you. But otherwise, in terms of the policing report being presented today, as you'll see, this covers quarters 1 and 2 of the current policing year, and is reported against what is the new 3-year Perth and Kinross local policing plan that members have previously endorsed. I don't want to take up too much time myself in opening, and I will hand over to Tom to both acknowledge those really kind comments, and he'll also then briefly summarise the key performance highlights, and as always we will both be available for questions after that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil. Now it is your turn, Tom.
Well, good morning, folks. Sorry, just getting the microphone off there. Firstly, thank you very much for all the kind comments. It's really appreciated, and I think it just is testament to the strong kind of partnership working that we have across all the local partners and through the committees and wider elected members. So probably just a good opportunity for me to pass on my thanks to everybody as well for the level of support that both myself and the wider policing teams in Perth and Kinross I've had from yourselves over the past couple of years, and I think the successful outcomes that we've had in some of the key areas of work are very much down to that strong partnership working, which is evident in Perth and Kinross. So thanks very much on behalf of myself and the wider team. In relation to the report, we touched on the fact that it's the first report using our revised template, which aims to provide not only statistical information on our year-to-date performance, but some wider insights into some of the different aspects of policing and corporate support functions that go on in support of our service delivery. These reports are obviously supplemented by the deeper dives into particular thematic areas that we've done over the last year. We've had roads policing inputs, and just last month the inputs that were delivered jointly by colleagues from Fire and Rescue Service and Community Safety in relation to antisocial behaviour, and with colleagues from the Violence Against Women Partnership in relation to violence against women and girls. You'll see our report is a fairly lengthy report, so I don't intend to go through it in great detail, but I'll just pick out a few pertinent points before Superintendent Davidson and myself take any questions. Starting off with violence, tragically during Q1 we did record one murder which occurred in the Perth area on the 8th of April, resulting in the death of a 20-year-old male from Perth. A 19-year-old male was quickly arrested and remains remanded in custody awaiting trial. The committee will probably remember that over the last year, significant challenges around the occurrence rates for robbery, and with a lot of the work that we've done both with ourselves and partners, we've now seen a welcome reduction in the number of robberies recorded compared with the same period last year, and a marked improvement in our detection rates. The level of serious assaults has risen significantly when compared to the same period last year. However, we've seen reductions in other areas of violent crime, and again our detection rates have increased, demonstrating that when these crimes do occur, that we'll have a robust investigative response in place. Our report provides some information on our response to violent crime and provides some information in relation to prevention activities, some of which has been touched on by the comments from the councillors in relation to both Operation Stung and Operation Centre Safe. Moving on to disorder and antisocial behaviour, you'll recall we had the joint presentation delivered last month, so I don't propose to go into great detail other than just to reiterate the information we provided last month, that overall incidents have seen a reduction when compared to last year to date, and a significant reduction against the 5-year average. Members may note from our report, and we've kind of touched on it through the fire service input as well, that we have seen some increases in crimes recorded for vandalism and fire raising. Although the percentage increase for fire raising appears quite stark, actually amounts to just 3 additional crimes. And again, as Serge commented on, we have looked at both incidents of fire raising and vandalism, and no particular trends identified. However, we continue to work across the partnership to try and identify opportunities for further prevention work to prevent further incidents occurring. The committee will also recall that over the last year we've had a particular focus on domestic house break-ins and the impact that can have on members of the community in Perth and Kinross, and we saw a significant rise last year. That hasn't been replicated in the first 2 quarters, and we'll actually see a very slight marginal decrease in the level of recorded crime. We've spoken previously about the fact that we often see offences of this nature being carried out by individuals who use the road network to travel into Perth and Kinross from other areas of the country to commit offences, and our report includes a number of examples where we've had successful investigations and arrested and charged individuals for a variety of offences. Moving on to roads policing, again, we had the joint presentation earlier this year, so I won't go into great detail in relation to that, but sadly we've seen further fatalities on our road network in Perth and Kinross over the last, or over the reporting period. I did put an update in the chat in relation to a couple of the questions that were posed during the fire service presentation in relation to the fatalities. The one fatality that we did see on the A9 was actually on a dual section of the A9 south, close to Aberystwyth, and in relation to casualties, we have seen a welcome reduction in casualties. I don't have the exact detail in relation to the causes of those particular accidents, but can just assure the committee that we carry out robust investigations with our roads policing unit, who look at the causation factors for those, and that forms a part of our prevention work, both in terms of education and engagement with road users to try and influence driver behaviour. Again, last month we delivered a joint presentation from our Public Protection Unit and Violence Against Women and Girls Coordinator, so I won't go into great detail at the moment in relation to that, but we have provided some further information in our report in relation to a number of the processes that are in place, both in terms of police processes and multi-agency processes, to safeguard victims and to target perpetrators of domestic violence and violence against women and girls. MATAC was highlighted last month, and I would highlight it again as a particularly effective tool for targeting those perpetrators who present the greatest risk of harm, and our report contains a number of examples of successful prosecutions of offenders from the Perth and Kinross area. And while it's out with the reporting period, and again it's been touched on already, it'd be remiss of me not to reflect on the fact that we're currently within the 16 days of activism campaign, and the police, along with our partners, are playing an active role in supporting that, and we have officers from local policing teams, specialist unit, and our Police Scotland youth volunteers supporting various events across Perth and Kinross as that campaign continues. And finally, you'll see a report extends to cover information on public contact and engagement strategy, and on Your Leadership Matters, which is a training course being delivered to leaders within the organisation to equip them with the skills required to provide effective leadership that is aligned to our organisational values. So in conclusion, again, just a personal thanks from me, from all of the support that allows us to carry out this work. Appreciate there's a lot of information in our report, but just conclude by saying that overall crime levels in Perth and Kinross remain lower than we see in other areas of the country, and it remains a safe place to live, work and visit. And Chief Superintendent Davison and myself will now be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for that. First question comes from Councillor Donaldson.
Could I come in later? Okay.
Councillor Hem.
Thank you very much. At a recent National Police Scrutiny Committee, we were told about serious organised crime in Scotland. And I was quite surprised to hear that the largest serious organised crime group in Scotland is actually based in Spain. Can I ask how Perth and Kinross is affected by that group, and do we have any locally based organised crime groups?
Yeah, Perth and Kinross, like any other area of the country, is not immune from the harm that's caused by serious and organised crime. Our division recognises that, and we actually have a dedicated serious and organised crime team that manifests itself in a variety of ways, and we've seen incidents of county lines drug activity and also elements of human trafficking, and we've had a number of operations in Perth and Kinross over the past few years directly targeting individuals who are involved in that type of criminal activity with some very successful prosecutions. As with all types of crime, there's a key aspect of prevention work, addressing some of the vulnerabilities that makes people susceptible to the harm from serious and organised crime, along with investigation and disruption activity that our local policing teams, supported by our serious and organised crime teams, deliver.
Bailey McLaren.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, I would just start by echoing my thanks to Tom and wish him all the best in his step up the ladder. My question is just wondering if you could provide a bit more detail surrounding rural crime. You know, sort of Perth and Kinross has such a large rural area, and I'm aware of certain crimes, vehicle thefts, machinery thefts, fuel thefts. I'm just wondering if you have a sort of picture that you could provide us with the rural crime and where it sits at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much for your comments and for your question, Billy McLaren. In relation to rural crime, we do identify that the fact that Perth and Kinross, you know, the geographic nature of it means that, you know, some of our communities are spread far and wide, and there's a degree of isolation with some of our communities as well, which can mean that they're more susceptible to being targeted by individuals who are particularly for acquisitive crime, thefts, etc. So we have a really successful partnership again, the Partnership Against Rural Crime, which is active in Perth and Kinross, and we have local representation from police and a number of other partner agencies, and that's also supported by our National Rural Crime Coordinator as well. So you will have seen probably in some of the Commander's bulletins that we issue some of the activity that we do to raise awareness of rural crime and provide some information in relation to prevention as well. So we're linking with partners including NFU, etc., and other statutory bodies to try and address that. And recently had a meeting with the Key District Salmon and Fisheries Board as well to invite them to participate in that in relation to some of the issues they activity as well, with influx of people coming into Perth and Kinross and some of the antisocial behaviour and criminal behaviour that we see from that.
We missed about 10 seconds of that, Tom, but I think we got the gist of your answer of the question I want today. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Convener, and I just also like to add my congratulations to Tom on his promotion. My question relates to page 40, which is the That Guy campaign tackling domestic abuse. I see that that's been running for 2 years now. In the report, it says that the campaign will run again in 2023. I wonder, does that specifically mean in this last quarter, or should that actually say 2024? And it was just to ask, is there a longer term plan to run this campaign ongoing? Thank you.
Yeah, the That Guy campaign is a particularly successful campaign and particularly useful tool to raise awareness. It has been run successfully previously. It is running again this year and will be delivered. And as with all campaigns, we'll look at how effective that is, and if there's any feedback in relation to it, and we always look to adapt and improve our campaign products to make sure that they're as up to date as possible and as relevant. But certainly very supportive of the That Guy campaign and other bystander activity that we mentioned in our report.
Okay, thank you. And so is that campaign going to run again next year then, or is that being completed in this quarter? Thank you.
Yeah, it should be completed in this quarter, but as I say, we will look to continue to run it into next year, but we will keep it under review, and if there's any amendments or any new products that come along that are relevant as well, then we'll obviously look to incorporate any learning.
Thank you.
Councillor Braun for your first question.
Thanks, Convener, and congratulations to you, Tom, from myself, and thank you for your work with the committee and the knowledge you impart when we ask questions. I'm focusing on shoplifting in this instance. We seem to have got a dramatic increase for this year to date, and it's widely reported at the moment in the press that shoplifting is no longer investigated or there's no response to it. One retailer, I think, quoted in the press, said 75% of crime is not responded to, shoplifting. I just wonder if you had a comment on that. I think the concern is obviously rural areas where you find many small shops who don't have the equipment of CCTV and store detectors or anything else. Obviously, this is a concern when they read this. I wonder what your comments are on that.
Yeah, thank you very much for your comments and for your question. Shoplifting is something that we've also spoken about in the introduction. There is a national issue. The increase in shoplifting is reflected not just across the wider Tayside division, but throughout Scotland and nationally. And you'll have seen a lot of comments in the national media. In relation to our response is the same to any reported crime. We obviously have to assess any ongoing threat, risk and harm, but where people are reporting a crime to us, we will absolutely respond and investigate that. And I think the work that we've done in Perth City Centre with the Retail Safety Group demonstrates our commitment to that. I think for myself, shoplifting doesn't occur in isolation. Individuals who are involved in shoplifting are quite often involved in other criminal activity, and there's a level of antisocial behaviour and perhaps violence that sometimes associates shoplifting. Our priority is to make Perth and Kinross a safe place to live, work and visit. So some of the activity that we've carried out, most notably in Perth City Centre, where our levels of shoplifting are highest, but that's very much about reassurance, trying to prevent offences and disrupt and deter offending behaviour. In relation to the outlying communities, the activity is very much the same. Our commander's bulletin last week included 2 instances where we arrested males for a number of shoplifting at 2 retail premises in the Auchterarder area. So it's something that we are very much focused on and that we will have a response for.
Online now, Councillor James.
Thanks, Convener. And like everybody else, Tom, my congratulations and personal thanks for the work you've done in our ward, Strathtay, particularly around Loch Clooney, and your support there. So thank you for that. My question is on page 40 and really 41 too of our papers. It's 15 of your report. And it's around domestic violence. As somebody with rather a large soapbox who's been a victim, there's obviously you're erring on the side of domestic violence towards women. And I noticed then on page 42 of our papers, 17 of your report, the notable outcomes of the 3 middle-aged, I suppose, males that have been prosecuted. Can I ask what the force's reaction is to domestic violence towards men, or what action you're taking, and have there been any prosecutions of women? Thank you.
Yeah, we respond to any report of domestic abuse in the same manner, Councillor. So everybody who reports domestic abuse, regardless of their gender, will receive the same service from Police Scotland, and that includes from the initial response by local officers who have all been trained in relation to domestic abuse and in relation to safeguarding, and that extends then through into our specialist teams locally with our domestic abuse investigation unit and our tier 2 domestic abuse liaison officers who do all of our victim contact and safeguarding, and that also extends again into our national team, so supported locally with the Domestic Abuse Task Force who are based in Forfar. And the processes that are in our document, again, we can refer people into MATAC, MARAC, regardless of their gender. So far, the perpetrators who have been through MATAC divisionally have all been male, but that's not surprising given that the largest proportion of perpetrators of domestic abuse are very much male. And the document there, the outcomes for this month are, as you say, for 3 males from the Perth area. But regardless of anyone's gender, if they contact Police Scotland to report domestic abuse, they will receive the same, hopefully high quality specialist response from ourselves and from our partners, including Bernardo's and Women's Aid who support us, and various other victim support who can support male victims as well.
Thanks.
Yes, Councillor. Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Convener. I wanted to follow on the question from Councillor Braun about shoplifting, and it was to press Chief Superintendent Davidson for an ongoing commitment to tackle shoplifting in Perth city centre and wider. I suspect with the retail group that we have going now and the efforts that they're going to make in terms of installing ShopSafe radio and Retail Against Crime CCTV, as well as greater impetus to reporting shoplifting crimes, which I think previously had retailers had stopped reporting, that these figures are only going to get worse before they get better. So therefore, there will be, a need to put additional resources and to continue to put resources into the city centre, both visibly and in terms of tackling serious and organised crime rings of shoplifters. So it really was to ask, is the commitment to tackle this rising area of crime going to be maintained?
Councillor Barrett, thanks for the question. And, I would reiterate Tom's comments of earlier on. And when we look at it nationally across Scotland, then from our perspective, any crime that is reported to us is subject of a detailed threat and risk and harm assessment. Clearly, we acknowledge that acquisitive crime has been on the increase, not just locally, but nationally. So it becomes a priority area. As Tom indicates, often we find that perpetrators of acquisitive crime have links to other aspects of crime. So, it's fully recognised the impacts in local communities. Each instance needs to clearly be reviewed in its own merits, and absolutely will get a response and an assessment from the police. It often is the case with shoplifting that with the increased benefits of CCTV and descriptions of local initiatives that you describe there, the look at ShopSafe and other things, that actually increases the opportunities we have to detect crime, but also to prevent crime. And beyond the really good examples of local working on a national basis, our partnerships and sort of preventions division work very closely with national business retailers and other areas to try and look at national trends and opportunities that we can both share across the business community and help to inform policing response. I hope that helps in answer.
Councillor Duff.
Thanks, Convener. My question is regarding comment on page 39 about notable activities that the police undertake, and in particular to do with speed checks. I'm quite sure all of my colleagues on the meeting today find this as an area which is frequently raised at community council meetings that we attend, and I'm not sure if there's largely a sort of unmet demand for speed checks in our communities, but that seems to be the perception that we get. And I wonder if there were any statistics surrounding serious road traffic collisions or injuries within sort of built-up areas as to how big a problem this particularly is, and what priority speed checks in built-up areas are for policing activity. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I can probably cover that. In terms of the incidence of serious casualties and fatalities within the built-up areas, they are significant. I think our roads policing colleagues provided a presentation earlier this year which highlighted and provided a map of where our incidents are of killed and seriously injured following road traffic.
I see Tom's. Sorry, Tom, you froze there. I was about to come in and finish for you, but you're back on.
Yeah, okay, hopefully we can hear me okay. Just some gremlins in the work on my last day. We'll obviously appreciate the concerns, what you receive in terms of complaints and concerns from the local community, obviously coming to myself as well, and we work really closely with colleagues in Perth and Kinross Council in relation to some of the engineering solutions. So speed complaints is a concern, we recognise that, and we do a lot of work both through our local community policing teams, and there's been some activity posted on our Facebook pages and our Commander's Bulletin over the last few weeks just about some community speed watches that we've been doing, but we also have some really good support from our divisional roads policing units as well. So where there are community concerns, again, I would urge you just to route them into us, and if there is concern about speeding in a particular area, then between ourselves and the council we can look at those particular issues and address those.
Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much. You'll be getting bored of this, Tom, but congratulations and all the best in your new job. My question is something I've brought up in the past, and that's regarding irresponsible bike users. Now, in the press recently, there's been a lot of talk about these powerful electric bikes. Now, as we know, they've got to have tax, they've got to have insurance, etc., etc. Have you come across any incidents in the Perth area? I have personally seen them, and I have witnessed someone without helmets. I don't know about the tax, but I think it's something that needs to be talked about. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you again for your comments and for the question. We receive complaints from time to time in relation to both the use of pedal cycles, electric bikes, but also electric scooters as well. And you referenced there some of the legislation that applies to them in terms of their use. So just for clarity, and we've put some information out that these electric scooters are classed as personal light electric vehicles and require landowners' permission to be used on private ground, and they can't be used on public roads or pavements, etc. So we do try and put out a lot of information just to educate people, particularly coming up to Christmas, where parents will perhaps be thinking about purchasing these types of bikes or scooters as presents for their children. So it's just something to raise awareness of. Again, it's not something that I regularly receive a lot of complaints about, but where there are instances, again, I would just urge you to flag that up to ourselves, and we'll respond to each incident as it comes.
I'll just reply to that and say, on your bike.
Thank you.
Councillor Smith, I'm waiting for the day where they put a golf buggy attachment onto one of these for you, so you can zip round the golf course on a wee scooter. We'll see. Next question, Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, convener. I have just one question, and it's actually in the back of an article in The Economist just over a week ago. And that article was about the opioids crisis in the US, where there have been, last year, there was 70,000 fatalities. And one of the key factors in that has been one particular drug, and that is fentanyl, which is a drug, I think, convener, you'll be aware, is even more potent and dangerous than heroin. So the question I want to ask, it seems today there's not been a major problem in Europe or in Scotland, but is there any evidence of the manufacture and supply of fentanyl by organised crime? And secondly, if it was to emerge as a problem, are there any specific measures that can be taken to deal with that as an issue, or is it just a question basically of ongoing sustained and effective intelligence?
Councillor Donaldson, I'll maybe pitch in with that one. So clearly the harms caused by drugs and substances, alcohol and otherwise is of significant concern to us all, not just policing but across partnerships, and very much taken forward by alcohol and drug partnerships in each of the areas across the country. Feeding into that, and as you indicate there, it's really important that we have a clear understanding on what the current picture is, what the current trend is, and we seek to both get that from service users, from reviews following drug death fatalities, and also in relation to crime investigations and intelligence we have on the go. Fentanyl has been seen and has had some surfacing occasions across Scotland, but it is not, in terms of the most recent information and sort of patterns and trends of sort of drug use in Scotland, the primary issues of use. It's very much the more manufactured drug scene in which we've got a clear focus into. So that's benzodiazepine and various other drugs of that type. What's really important alongside that trend information is twofold. One is around about how we can tackle in an enforcement perspective, and clearly we do that through our drug enforcement activities with partners, but equally on the health and safety side and the prevention side is that as we get this trend information, it's very much passed out through our local policing teams, but also through partners and through the alcohol and drugs partnerships, so that we can best advise and support our communities and drug and substance users, so that they can remain as safe as possible. I hope that helps.
Superintendent Davison, thank you.
Online now, Councillor Frampton.
Thank you. I want to ask a question regarding the domestic abuse. In the instance where there's a historic case of domestic abuse reported by a victim and the perpetrator is then let go without charge, and then say 5-6 years later, police then contact that victim to say that the perpetrator has been charged with another incident of abuse, is that first victim's case looked at properly then, so that then both victims essentially get justice?
I can probably answer that. Thanks very much for your question. Yeah, absolutely it is. I can provide that reassurance. The MATAC investigations that we reference in our report are probably the best example of where we've used that effectively to effectively target a perpetrator, but to provide a justice outcome for the victims as well. So where there is an offence that's taken place historically, then we will very much look at the offender's overall offending behaviour throughout their relationships with a number of different partners. And again, even if there aren't multiple partners, what I would say is that any report that's provided to us of historic abuse, whether it's domestic abuse or sexual offences, then we will very much investigate that. So as an investigative tactic that we rely on heavily and is particularly effective.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
Just to follow up on that, where we are doing that, just to provide some further reassurance to victims, is if we are investigating a complaint that was perhaps previously been concluded sometime before, then we will very much make contact with the victim and take an informed view from them as to whether they're supportive of that case being used to support any other ongoing investigation. And again, we'll work really closely with partners to ensure that the safeguarding is in place and appropriate support is available for that victim right through the entire criminal justice process.
Thank you, that's good to know.
Thank you.
Councillor Braun, your next question.
Thank you, Convener. Surprised me, that's come around quick. It was a question regarding police numbers, actually. We've reported heavily again in the media that there's going to be a cutback in police numbers. I wonder how that's going to affect us here in Perth and Kinross and perhaps more nationally. It's a concern for many people, as you can imagine.
Councillor Braun, you know, I'll maybe take that one. So I think, as everybody will know, the real terms deficit that was affected through the budget settlement for this year did have an effect, and the Chief Constable came out nationally in advising around about a reduction in police officers from what was 17,234 down to 16,600. And that certainly has been in case and in place since the 1st of April this year, and there's been a fair bit of ongoing narrative and discussion around about what that has meant, and service redesign that we've clearly had ongoing. In connection to that reduction of officers, one point was that through the previous year, and because of police pension changes, which had seen increased leavers, and following on from slower recruitment with the focus around about COP26, it had meant that essentially in the previous year we had been running at 16,600 in any case. So there's essentially been that carry forward into this year, and it's around about settling our stable operating model on the back of that reduced budget. The more recent media, which you know, I suspect you're referring to, is as we start to look forward to budget decisions and allocations for the next year. So my understanding is that the Chief Constable is going to be presenting at the SPA tomorrow around about what a budget submission is for policing. That will clearly enter into the process alongside all other public sector organisations to see where budget settlement will rest. Clearly, the implications from what that may mean to officer numbers won't be known until there's an understanding around about what the settlement ends up being. But clearly, if we are in a position where you know, there is a similar budget or a reduced budget applied, then it may mean that harder choices need to continue. But that, you know, won't necessarily just be for policing. It'll be across all services that are waiting on those budget decisions coming out. I don't know if that was the area you were aiming to question at. What I would say is, and I know Tom covered this previously, you know, policing will work and flex within the resourcing it has got, and in terms of for Tayside, you know, we're here presenting against a local policing plan that has been well consulted on locally, that has determined our local priorities, and whilst there will and continue to be hard choices to take, our focus and our priority will remain on those areas, because they are the areas that matter the most to our local communities.
Councillor McPherson for your second question.
Thank you, Convener. My question relates to page 49, specifically mobile working. I note that it says some 12,400 new devices with enhanced functionality in terms of accessing specialist databases have been rolled out across the country. I was just wondering how many of those devices have been made available in Perth and Kinross? And can you say what those devices actually look like? Are they? Is that based on a tablet platform, or is it on a specialist bespoke device? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your question. The D division, or Tayside division, actually piloted the rollout of mobile devices, so they have actually been rolled out for some time to our frontline policing, uniformed policing resources across the division, including within Perth and Kinross. And in the second phase, we actually rolled out devices to our CID and public protection colleagues as well, again across the division and into Perth and Kinross. Really effective, useful tools, particularly we touched earlier on just the geographic makeup of Perth and Kinross. So quite often our officers will leave the station at the start of their shift and not return. Previously, to complete any of their work, we would have had to return to the station and do that. These devices allow them to remain out and within their communities, and in terms of what they look like, effectively not dissimilar to smartphones that most of us we'll carry the devices carried by our CID and public protection colleagues are more akin to small tablets, but really effective devices. So if you do see officers out in the communities and appear to be using mobile phones, then there every chance that they're actively engaged in working and serving the communities and carrying out their functions. But it just increases our effectiveness and our capability and saves officers having to return to the office to complete any reports or admin.
Thank you.
Back to online, Councillor James, for your second question.
Thanks, Convener. Tom, I suppose this is quite relevant, actually, if you're going to community safety. Community councils, it's always on the agenda of a community council for update from local police or police matters. And we actually do have quite a lot of former policemen on community councils, certainly within my ward. I just wondered, going forward, and I'm very conscious of your tight budgets and how restricted you are, but will there be an opportunity for officers to attend community councils? It's been a while, actually, for some. And even if it's not on a monthly basis, perhaps on a quarterly basis or something, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, and absolutely we do try and support community councils. Our local policing teams do work shift patterns, so sometimes aligning their shift pattern to dates and times of community council meetings can be a bit of a challenge, but we do provide inputs where we can, and particularly where specific issues of concern are raised. So recently we had a bespoke community council that focused solely on road safety matters in the Crieff area, and that was attended both by officers from the local policing team but also from our divisional roads policing unit. So it is a challenge. It is a challenge that some community councils are more active than others. It is a challenge to ensure representation at every one, but we will certainly try and ensure that there is a feed into those community councils to address any particular concerns. But what I would say is, if there is a particular issue that's causing significant concern within the community, or as we do here, a thematic issue that the community would like more information on, then please feel free, while I'm still in my role, to contact me directly. And once the new area commander is in post, then we'll obviously make those introductions and they can manage it as well. But no, absolutely something with support, and we do try and use the commander's bulletin as well, just to share some information on relevant matters which are taking place within the communities.
Billy, a hand for the question.
Thank you very much. Councillor Braun asked part of my question about the budget cuts, but the second part of it was about there's currently a freeze on the civilian staff recruitment and back office functions, and I just wonder how many frontline officers are being used to cover those back office functions, and if they're not, is there a degradation in service because of that freeze and the cuts?
But Bailey Ahern, I'll maybe pick up on that. So clearly, as we would all appreciate in any area or public service or business where you have to make hard choices and ultimately introduce a freeze, that there ultimately is a consequence in that work clearly either needs to be redirected, stopped, or prioritised in a fashion. The previous Chief Constable, the new Chief Constable, the real clear priorities around about frontline policing, local policing, and our absolute focus on local national priorities. So what we will continue to do with our resourcing is ensure that it is focused in those areas. Our supporting staff roles are extremely vital to us, and they undertake a number of functions, whether that be staffing at front counters in police stations, whether that be in business support roles, whether that be in people and development and various others. But there are also police staff roles within our contact centres, within our custody environment, and various other places. So whilst there is a freeze, there is a freeze within reason. So clearly it's looked at in terms of threat and risk assessment around about the posts. So our contact centre is a critical area of frontline business, for example. So recruitment continues to be active in those areas. and clearly in areas therefore where we have continued freeze, it's areas that have been subject of can we apply that prioritised mitigations. In terms of officers backfilling, then the answer is no, it's not a tactic that is specifically being deployed. We are having to look at other mitigations ultimately to account for the challenges of not being able to undertake some of that work. And what that might mean, just to give examples, may mean that we will have gaps in coverage for the opening times of some of our front counters on occasions. It may mean that there is longer than previous delays to responses to some inquiries or business support matters than we would have previously enjoyed, but they are all looked at and prioritised clearly on a basis of risk and threat, and with that direct focus on frontline service delivery.
Thank you very much. Do we have any comments on the report?
Again, I pass on my best wishes to Tom in his new role. My only comment would be that this is an excellent report, but it's a public-facing report, and there are quite a lot of acronyms, particularly in the table and the initial body of the report. I would just ask you maybe in future to try and sort of put some sort of maybe bibliography or table just to allow the information to be more easily accessed and understood. Thank you. Sorry.
Thanks, Convener. And first of all, thank you for the report today. It's very interesting. It covers all the figures that we need to have. And I think all of us would agree that the dedication of the police officers throughout the Tayside is beyond doubt. But I think there are ongoing concerns about police numbers, particularly in rural areas where we often don't see many policemen at all, or police officers, I should say. I think those who commit crime know this and are emboldened by this fact, and particularly with these minor crimes, petty crimes, speeding, vandalism, shoplifting, they have a feeling that they're probably going to get away with it, particularly speeding through our rural villages, is because there's going to be nobody there to stop them. And I think what the public would like to know is they want to see more police officers recruited, not see numbers cut back. And I feel this is a matter for the Scottish Government to really get their head round. And we've heard about it with the fire service, it's also with the police service, and of course the NHS as well. These are our emergency services. They're the institutions we rely on to protect us, and they should be fully funded. Now, in conversation with Phil, we heard that obviously recruiting the right people is another problem. I mean, being a police officer is a dangerous job, as we know. And who wants to be in a job where you're spat at or assaulted regularly or sworn at? It's very difficult. But the police in the past always had one asset, which was the fact that the judicial system supported them. And we see these days where police officers are spat at or assaulted. The perpetrator, if they're caught, ends up with a bit of community service, and that's all. This lack of support in the judicial system is not good. We need tougher sentences for those who assault police officers to encourage people to want to do the job. I think that's the important point, I think, is that the Scottish Government just need to wake up to this, that they need to fund the police correctly, and they need to ensure that the judicial system supports our police when it has to. Thank you, Convener.
You know, the member knows I'm not an MSP, but I think he needs to compare his numbers with his own government down in Westminster to how they perform in England, and then compare these data. Councillor Leishman.
Thanks very much, Convener. Yes, firstly, thanks very much for the report and for answering all the questions. It was all very in-depth and interesting. And as Councillor Braun just touched on there are some very similar operational issues as with your colleagues there in Scottish Fire and Rescue. I would just like to single out one topic from the paper. Listening to the report and the questions from councillors today, I appreciate that shoplifting is a big issue, but alarmingly, a lot of the narrative heard and seen in the media focuses on just the crime element of the action, and not the manufactured social issues that drive many people into committing that crime. And while I appreciate that shoplifting is bad, and in my other job I have been a victim of shop stock being stolen, and I have sympathy with my fellow shop owners, we should all remember that the cost of living crisis, a lack of opportunity for social mobility, and the resulting desperation people feel because of political and economic decisions taken out with their control plays a massive part in people's actions.
Thank you very much. Nobody else for comments. Can we note this report? Thank you very much. Going to take a 5-minute recess for a toilet break. We'll recommence as soon as everybody's back in place, in case that's shorter. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Serge. Thank you, Phil, and thank you again, Tom. Although you had a million thank yous already. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Again, we have still quite a big agenda, and the IGB's at the back of us. And there's already messages coming through from Scott Hendry about sort of maybe having to inform those members that we might be a bit later. So if we can get on as sharply as we can, that'll be good to keep the questions as succinct as possible and comments to the point. So our next paper, paper 5, is the Strategic Housing Investment Plan. And can I have Kevin Devon, who is the Senior Service Manager, no he's not, to introduce it. I changed Kevin's name on this, but I didn't change the title. That's fine.
That's not a problem. Thanks very much. Good morning, committee members. I'm just going to present the committee paper presenting Perth and Kinross's annual Strategic Housing Investment Programme, otherwise known as the SHIP report, which covers a period of 2024 to 25 to 28 to 29. The main headlines from the report is that there is a new target of 210 affordable homes per year, which aligns with the Council's new local housing strategy, which was approved at this committee on the 15th of March 23, and which is increased from the last local housing strategy, which was a target of 150 homes. Last year, the financial year 22-23, Perth and Kinross and our RSL partners had delivered 203 affordable homes. That includes 167 new build properties and 36 buyback properties. Since 2016-17, ourselves, Perth and Kinross, and our partners, partner RSLs, have delivered 1,919 affordable homes, and this year's SHIP report proposes to deliver 1,490 homes over the SHIP period. The SHIP has been submitted to the Scottish Government's More Homes Division to meet their target of the 27th of October, and they've revised at the time submission that this is subject to the formal approval at today's committee. That's obviously the sort of headlines, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Do we have any questions on the SHIP report? Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Convener. Once again, only one question, but it's important on affordable housing, especially for rural areas. We state at present, and I think we all know it's the case, that affordable housing is provided. It should be 25% of new housing developments must include affordable housing. Could I ask, though, and this may come in the paper also later on the MAUG, do we have any ability at present to vary that 25%, especially perhaps in certain rural areas, take an area like Comrie, or are we going to, and I think that can be done in Stirling, if I'm right, or are we going to have to wait for the new local development plan to come into place? Thank you.
Kevin, do you want to take a
Yeah, there was in the new local housing strategy, there was a sort of change in the detailing of that policy, where there's insistence on the 25% to meet an on-site provision instead of a commuted sums, and that was recently approved and is coming into action now. So there's new assistance on on-site provision instead of the monies. I believe that will have to change in the new LDP3. It wouldn't be anything that could be changed during the current local development plan, because that's always an existing document and it's currently go through the new process.
So for any substantive change, we will have to wait for the new local development plan. Yeah,
that's correct. Yeah.
Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Convener. It's just a point of clarification, really. I seem to be suffering a bit of brain fog here. It refers to page 54, where the report states, with a PAYKEY's Perth and Kinross Council target of delivery of 50% affordable homes through brownfield regeneration. Is that saying that 50% of all homes built on brownfield sites will be affordable homes? Thank you.
Not necessarily. It's basically targeting that we use brownfield land to deliver most of our affordable housing contributions. So instead of going to greenfield land as such, and that can be breaks into different distinctions. So that would be new housing sites, which technically will be greenfield because they've been allocated in the development plan as a housing site. But what we're hoping to target is part of regeneration and basically take on sites that are basically laying vacant for some time and identifying those to try and meet our needs.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Convener. I'm looking at page 88 at the moment, and it's to do with the various types of affordable housing. One of the points we're making here is the concept of self-build plots. And this came up at Planning Committee last month. Under normal circumstances, the developer obviously builds their 25% out. And they actually build the properties. So the properties are there, they're ready to be occupied, which is obviously an ideal situation. And it's usual, I think, for them to build those first. So we get the affordable housing quickly, they build them, sell them on, they get the money, which then helps them develop the rest of the site. But the concept came up of self-build plots before, I say last month at planning. And I have a concern about these because a developer will leave these plots open. It then needs somebody to come along and want to build them. They've got to get planning permission, they've got to get the finance and so on and so forth, which could take much longer to get the affordable housing up and ready than if the developer built it. So I'm just wondering, is that an avenue we should be pursuing? And the other thought is that it could set a precedent for the developer, you know, on a bigger site, for example, with say 20 or 25 commitments to social housing, affordable housing, and they might just turn around and say, well, there's 5 built and the other 20 you can sort out with yourselves as a plot. So, which may be an easy option out for them. So I'm just concerned this is an unusual way to pursue it because we're not going to get the houses quick enough. I suppose the concept of what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, it's a fair comment on that, and it's usually identified in sites where there's been little RSL interest, so they don't have a presence in that area, for example. So it's basically a way to try and looking at a different avenue of delivering social housing or affordable housing as such. So although it's happening already, and this is the one that was identified in the planning committee is the first one, and almost you could probably say our pilot scheme on this. I can't see that it's something we want to explore, but it can't be it won't be our dominant way of delivering affordable housing in rural areas.
Yeah, I think the concern, Kevin, is that these plots could just be left unoccupied for a considerable time, really. I think that's the worry. Whereas obviously, as I said, the developer builds and they're built, they're ready to go, and that's it. So that's my concern, I think. But thanks anyway.
Elaine, you'd like to comment further?
Yeah, thank you. Just as Kevin said, it's a pilot project that we're looking at and we're targeting it at key workers. So we actually know people who want to build in that area. It's 6 plots and there's quite a lot of guidance and regulation around that as well. However, there's been a lot of talk on it. I think maybe a briefing note might be helpful in terms of just exactly what the project is, and we can maybe arrange that from today's committee if that's helpful.
Yeah, I think that will be helpful. Thank you very much. Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, convener. My question was with regard to paragraph 5.2 of the report and brownfield site development, and I wanted to know how the council was approaching the acquisition of brownfield sites. We've seen, I think, both Kingdom Housing being quite successful in getting brownfield sites for 100% affordable housing development, and Hillcrest Housing acquiring, I think, St Andrews Street and the Hillside, or part of the Hillside Hospital, former Hillside Hospital site, for 100% affordable housing, although there's obviously a mix of tenures involved in that. So how are we approaching site acquisition for brownfield development? Obviously, there's the Beech Grove site, but later on in the agenda. But I wondered if there was plans to develop that as a strand for the local housing strategy and the SHIP moving forward.
Yeah, I can answer that. That's a fair point. There is basically throughout the sites being identified in the SHIP report further on down the tables. It's a mixture of new sites, greenfield, sort of allocated housing sites and brownfield sites, which are usually in urban areas. So we're basically there's a balance of trying to basically make sure we're doing some regeneration and bringing sites back into use, and that obviously from that point of view is delivering affordable homes for ourselves and RSLs. What we're going to be doing is part of the LHS, or the local housing strategy, is basically a survey of brownfield sites and trying to identify sites that may have laid vacant for some time, and basically if they're under council ownership, try and bring them in and speak to that service and see if it's surplus and bring it into our house building programme, or if it's private land, we could try and contact the developer or sort of the landowner and basically have some discussions about the future intentions of that site and see if there's an opportunity there to bring the site into our ownership as an authority, or maybe identify an RSL that may be interested in bringing the site into a potential housing site for affordable housing as well. Also on it, running parallel with the Beech Grove one, is the Balhousie Primary School site. That's also a site you're probably familiar with, which has been declared surplus, is currently vacant, and is basically part of our house building programme for affordable housing as well. So we're trying to deliver. Basically, we've targeted to meet, and we're looking at any sort of potential avenue to bring sites on board to meet those targets.
Thanks very much, convener. I think that's really helpful. The second question I had isn't really related to it, but I'll just charge on. And that was with regard to paragraph 4.3 and our kind of strategic partners that we engage with. There's no mention of the Cairngorm National Park there, and certainly we've heard from the Provost about the Cairngorm National Park having an affordable housing policy of a 45% requirement. And I just wondered whether there was a need to have a stronger working relationship with them, and particularly if they are able to deliver such high percentages of affordable homes.
Yeah, that's noted. Yeah, that's probably a potential to speak to them and basically have more working groups with that. It's always useful to bring as many sort of public bodies on board in the delivery of the house building programme for affordable housing.
Obviously, there's different types of affordable housing, so from your mid-market right down to our social rent, and it's about that mixture and that balance for need within our communities. Do you have another question? Councillor James, we've got a question from you.
Yeah, thanks, convener. Thanks, Kevin, for the report. It's a real daft question from me, I'm afraid. You kind of get used to that. Table 2 on page 55, there's reference to Stanley, and it goes across the page into, where am I looking now? Bertha Park. They come under Perth, but is that not done on council ward basis? Because I noticed there's also Glens and the Strathern and what have you. It's just that those two items are in Strathay, or have I got the wrong end of the stick? Sorry.
The table referring to areas is the housing market area or letting area as such, so it could be where it comes under for housing allocation. Yeah, that would be my understanding of it.
Yeah, okay, thanks. I just thought it might have been in council ward areas. It's my misunderstanding.
What we could do is make that clear in the next table.
Thank you.
Bailey Brock.
Thank you, convener. Just while we're on that page, at page 56, it says Broich Road, Creef, Strathern Mix 55. It's really just for clarification, because in page 94, we have Broich Road, Creef, Strathern 55, and then in the columns we've got 25, 35, and that comes to a calculation of 60. So are we looking at 55, or is there an error on that one on page 94?
Is this on? So I'm just double checking. This is the ship report itself.
All right, I'll wait till we come to that one then.
Sorry, could you just clarify that point again? Sorry about that.
Sorry, Bailey Brock, could you repeat your question for the officer, please?
Yeah, I'll just go back to page 94 when we're looking at Broich Road, Creef. It's got Strathern, it's got 55, and in the columns it's got 25 and 35. So in the calculation that comes to 60. So I just wondered, is there an error in that? Because your report beforehand states 55.
It's different phases with different developers on Broich Road. You've got the Ogilvy Home site, which is up and running and near completion, and then you've got the further site with the 55 is referring to is a different site. So that's a site which is currently, I don't believe the plan applications have been submitted for that one yet. That's currently at a pre-application stage, and I believe that's going to be a Persimmon Homes development. So it's basically two separate housing projects. That could be the sort of difference between the two. Does that make sense?
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks for that clarification.
No problem. Thank you.
Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, convener. Paragraph 3.5 of the actual SHIP report on page 80 of the pack talks about empty homes properties and bringing them back into use. I know that council's got a fantastic record of doing that over a long period of time, but I did wonder whether the council's aim to bring back 130 homes into use each year was maybe the correct or incorrect figure.
Actually, that's actually a typo. It should be 30 properties per year. Apologies for that, but that's not it, and I'll update the report. Thank you.
So even 30 is really good. You know, I thought it was maybe going to say it's 13, but no, thank you for that.
Just to update you on that, last year it was, let me just check my figures here. We had 36 buybacks, so we exceeded our target, and this year we're currently moving towards 41 buybacks. So yeah, but there's obviously different years. It obviously depends what comes available in the market. But yeah, 30 year is the target. Apologies for the error, but thanks for bringing that to my attention.
And is there a difference between buybacks and bringing back empty properties into use, though?
It's sort of combined. Basically, there is buybacks and both at the same target because we're basically targeting existing properties. Yeah, so it's sort of, they're both linked.
I think Elaine's going to add to your comment.
Two different things. A buybacks is where you buy back off the open market. Our empty homes initiatives is bringing back empty properties back into use. So they are two different things.
Councillor Duff.
Thanks, convener. I think my question follows on from Councillor Barrett's. My question is regarding the table at paragraph 9.5 on page 87 of the report, or of the pack, sorry, which talks about, I think it says empty homes brought back into use for housing, should be the title there, but it's cut off slightly. And there are various figures, but normally around about 130 to 150. Apart from 2 years, 2020, 21, which I'm assuming was a COVID-related drop, but this year it's 66, and I just wondered if that was just in relation to the current costs of construction, if you like, or if there were some other factors at play there that would explain the drop from the kind of general average. Thank you.
Elaine.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Duff. That's correct. It's just the huge pressures and supplies issues with trades and resources in that area. We've really struggled. There's lots of projects being identified, but in terms of contractors and materials, there's been a real difficulty in that area, hence the impact on the figures there.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Barrett, did you have any other questions? That's fine. Therefore, I will move the paper. This report provides the annual update of the Strategic Housing Investment Plan for the council area. The SHIP sets out the planned affordable housing delivery programme for the council and its partners for the next 5 years. As in previous years, it has been prepared to ensure that the significant planned investment in new affordable housing meets the needs of our local community and aligns with the aims of the local housing strategy. The SHIP has been submitted to the Scottish Government to inform our agreement to fund the projects by the council and its partners. The programme will continue to be developed in response to changing circumstances, and the support seeks a renewed delegated authority to council officers to do so. You're asked to approve the SHIP and ongoing development, and I'm happy to move to do so. Can I ask Councillor McCall to please second the report, please?
Very pleased to formally second the report, convener.
Do members have any comments on the report? I see no comments on the report. If there are no amendments, can we agree the recommendations set out? Agreed. Thank you very much. Item 6 on our agenda is Beechgrove House. I'm going to hand over to the Vice Convener, Sheila McCall, for this item.
Thank you, convener. Could I ask Mr. Devine to please introduce the report?
Yep, no problem. Thank you. This report's an update on the council's motion in February 2020 to explore potential options for the future use of the site and building of Beechgrove House. A strategic case in 2021 concluded the demolition redevelopment of the site for affordable housing was the prepared option. A feasibility cost plan was produced, which was updated just recently in September 23, demonstrated the difference in cost between the new build and the retention and conversion of existing buildings. From this report, it's being proposed that the Beechgrove site is redeveloped as a mixed tenure affordable housing development for approximately 40 homes and to meet the specific needs of older people. And it's also proposed that a design team be appointed to progress the project to provide the much needed affordable housing within the area. On that, basically what we're targeting, which reflects what was demonstrated in the SHIP programme, is that we're hoping to, if this is approved, have a site start in approximately financial year 24-25. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions to the report? Sorry, Councillor Braun. It didn't come up, sorry.
Thanks, Vice Convener. Question on section 4.3, Kevin, on this one. It gives the three options that we're considering, 1, 2 and 3. Number 3, it mentions, again, demolishing and developing the site for affordable housing, but it also mentions maintaining a hub for the health and social care partnership services, but then it's not mentioned any further. I just wondered why we're considering discounting that.
I believe that was previously considered and not taken forward. That was my understanding in the original motion. Is that correct? I could double check that.
The original motion left it open for officers to evaluate a range of options. I think since I brought the motion, I can perhaps speak to that in the first place. The main thrust of the motion was that as this was already council-owned site and land, that we should retain it for public use. And officers then went through several steps to identify possible options, and this report is their outcome of that work. I'm quite pleased with the outcome so far. But obviously elected members will have their own questions to ask, and I welcome them. But I know that Kevin wasn't here at that time, so perhaps he doesn't have the same history that I have on this. And Elaine wants to come in and do something about that. Thank you.
Councillor Broughton, yeah, it was considered and it was discounted based on quite a lot of negotiation and discussion with the partnership. There was a couple of reasons in terms of grant funding. We wouldn't get grant funding to build the hub. We would have to find grant funding elsewhere. We would have to reduce the number of affordable housing to make way for the hub. And there was also concerns when we did a survey in terms of the local community, the impact that hub in terms of the traffic and the impact of people living in close proximity to it. That's why it was discontinued or not taken forward as an option.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Elaine and Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Vice Convener. I just wanted to ask how wedded the proposal to have 40 houses for older people we are. I appreciate that there are specific housing needs for older people, but I thought that we'd met a significant amount of those with the acquisition of the former Wheelin site in Scone and the development there. And do we have the housing need and demand statistics that justify a need for 40 houses purely for older people in that location, which is, an excellent location for family housing, given that it's, in very short walking distance to primary and secondary schools.
Basically, once a design team is being appointed, we will have close liaison with the housing letting team to basically confirm what the waiting lists are and what the local demand is. At the moment, the site's been targeted for over 55s as the potential tenants for the site, but obviously we'd have to seek assurances from our housing team to see if that meets the current local needs. That these needs can change quite rapidly from year to year, so it's obviously any significant decision making on the housing mix, which is basically the type of houses going on the site, will basically be in close liaison with them for them to sign off before we proceed.
Thank you, Kevin. Elaine, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Barrett. It's a good point, and we did look at that with quite a lot of information, and just with our challenging demographics, we decided to go for older people, but also we've got a lot of older people under occupying within our own stock, and therefore it would free up the capacity of larger accommodation. So we're actually going to get more availability of accommodation as a result of this development.
Yeah, thanks. That's really good news. Thank you.
Thank you. I think what Elaine has said, I would endorse that. It's in my ward, as most of you will know, and I know just from casework, the under occupancy in a number of properties is significant. There's also a lot of people on long-term waiting for a transfer who want to stay in their locality for a number of reasons. So I think there's benefit in that type of solution for a range of issues. Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Hearn, you want to ask a question now?
Yes. This is a different question. Did you look at the possibility of looking at assisted living? Because there's an increasing demand for people wanting to live independently, and assisted living is possibly the only direction moving forward. So was there any consideration looked at doing that at all?
Elaine, do you want to come back in on that one, please?
Yeah, that was considered as part of our independent living, but just because of the close proximity and also for older people, it was decided that assisted living within that area probably not. It probably would be a good area, but I think we're going to get more benefit in terms of for the older persons. But we've got other sites in mind in terms of assisted living going forward. So it was between assisted living and older people, but we went with the older persons kind of like option instead. So yeah, it was a consideration.
Thank you, Elaine. Apologies. It's proposed that the Breachcliff site be developed as a mixed tenure affordable housing development for 40 homes to meet the specific needs of older people. It was also proposed that a design team be appointed to progress with this project to provide much needed affordable housing within the area. I move the report and ask committee to approve the recommendations as outlined in section 2.1 of this report. And can I ask the convener to second the report?
Yes, I'm happy to second the report.
Thank you, convener. Are there any comments on the report? Don't see any in the chat. So in which case then can we agree the recommendations as set out in the report? Thank you.
Agreed.
I will now hand back to the convener.
Well, thank you very much. Item 7 on our agenda is the Warm Welcome and Good Food Funds. Can I ask David Stoke to introduce the report, please?
Then it went off again. Sorry about that. We're on. Councillors, this report provides information on the delivery of the Warm Welcome Fund, which was formerly called the Cost of Living Fund, and the Good Food Fund, which was formerly the Food Security Fund. The report provides a summary of delivery of the Cost of Living Fund in 22-23, funding allocated and the impacts and changes that we made to the process for the Warm Welcome Fund for the year 23-24. Both funds provided grant funding for community groups to provide activities, warm spaces and warm home packs for those negatively impacted by the cost of living crisis. Alongside the Warm Welcome funding, there's been financial support via the Food Security Fund and Good Food Funds for community food projects, providing emergency food, food waste and community cook it projects. More detailed information on the evaluation of these funds and a ward by ward allocation of funding is provided in the appendices to the report. Officers from Culture and Community Services are happy to answer any questions you may have regarding this paper.
Do I have any questions on the report? I can't see any questions on the report, so I now will move the report. This report sets out how the Warm Welcome Fund and the Good Food Fund have delivered since 2022. The impact of the fund has been had on those most in need is summarised as in the critical work in community groups and volunteers in delivering these projects. This demonstrates the Council's continued commitment to work with our third sector partners and supporting those most across our communities who are in need. Note the impact of the Cost of Living and Food Security Fund. Note changes to the delivery of the Warm Welcome and Good Food Funds. Approve an evaluation of the process and impact of the Warm Welcome Fund and approve the formal recognition of the efforts of community volunteers in delivering Warm Welcome Fund projects. I am happy to move. Can I have the Vice Convener to second, please?
Happy to formally second, convener.
I have comments coming through for this paper. Councillor Leishman.
Thanks, convener, and thank you to all officers that contributed to the reports we received in the papers. And no matter how tempting, my comment isn't going to focus on why we have a society that has been designed to create inequalities and strife. While the paper we have just discussed may be born out of the social conditions that have been created by political choices, I instead want to focus on what this paper is about. And I think this paper is about what kind of values we want our council to have. Council officers deserve praise for the pragmatism they've shown in modifying the delivery of the various funds, and continuous assessment of our delivery means that help will hopefully be more efficient, more impactful and reach more people throughout our communities. Officers have identified what works and where resources are needing to go, and the importance of getting it right operationally really can't be overemphasised. I would also like to record my appreciation for the volunteers and organisations across our wards that work to build community togetherness and in even some cases provide people with the chance of educational achievement and employment in order to defeat a catalogue of issues such as social isolation, loneliness, hunger, cold and a lack of opportunity. The thoughtfulness and solidarity shown across communities by scores of people and organisations is something that Perth can rightly be proud of. Thanks very much, Convener.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Convener. I really just want to echo everything that Councillor Leishman has said, and also that you said in your introduction. I think that this paper is extremely helpful. I think the fact that there were no questions on it demonstrates the clarity that the report contains. I also think that the appendices demonstrate the reach into the communities that the council has managed to secure, and I think this demonstrates how small amounts of funding can make a huge impact at a local level. I think it does demonstrate the Perth and Kinross offer in action, and I wholly commend it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Duff.
Thanks, Convener. I welcome the report, certainly. My comment was going to be around the paragraph 7.2, and you may recall that some time back, Councillor Forbes and I brought forward a suggestion about changes to the way in which data was recorded about people who are using the Warm Welcome Fund, and I see that I'm pleased to see that officers seem to have come up with a better method of recording those who will be attending warm spaces, which will give us a better idea of the impact of the use of this funding. So thanks for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have no other comments. If there are no amendments, can we agree with the recommendations set out in this report? Item 8 on our agenda is the 5th Local Child Poverty Action Report. Can I ask Claire Mailer to introduce the report, please?
Thank you. Good afternoon, councillors. This is the 5th edition of the Local Child Poverty Action Report and actions which will be taken into 23-24 to implement the 4th year of our Child Poverty Delivery Plan. The report this year is in a slightly different format, as we will see, as we're now following new guidelines which require us to focus on innovation and learning and evidence-based outcomes. Our Child Poverty Delivery Plan was approved by the Council last year, and at that point marked a shift to a much more strategic and ambitious approach to shifting the dial on child poverty. It aligns with Best Start Bright Futures, the Child Poverty Delivery Plan of the Scottish Government, and is clearly key in supporting the achievement of our corporate priority to tackle poverty. This year's report emphasises that the real extent of poverty here in Perth and Kinross can be masked by 3 factors. Poverty, as we know, is stigmatised, and it is difficult for people to be open about the fact that this is a challenge that they face. The Scottish Index of Multiple Deprivation, used as a proxy measure for poverty, identifies deprived areas, not deprived people, and therefore is not good at identifying poverty where we have it dispersed in areas, in rural areas like Perth and Kinross. And the over-reliance on income-based measures does not take into account the significantly higher cost of living in our rural areas. There have been some welcome signs of positive change. The number and percentage of employees across Perth and Kinross earning less than the real living wage has decreased. There has been a slight reduction in job density. That means fewer people are chasing the jobs that are available. And median earnings increased by 8.8% last year, enhancing the ability of families to cope with the cost of living crisis. However, there are ongoing areas for concern. There has been little movement on the gender pay gap. Private sector rents have increased over the last 3 years fairly significantly. The number of workless households is still 10% above the pre-COVID rate. And we have seen a significant increase in payments from the Scottish Welfare Fund, which might indicate, yes, people are accessing the service, but it also would indicate that people are continuing to struggle. The report provides a series of case studies which focus on innovation and new initiatives which are being taken to mitigate and reduce poverty. These include the establishment of the Anti-Poverty Task Force, community wealth building approaches being undertaken by NHS Tayside, the Children's Scorecard, the new Community Benefits Portal and MAP, our additional cost of living crisis payments to foster and kinship carers, our redesign wraparound care services in Inchview and Pitlochry to provide childcare from 8 AM to 6 PM, and the delivery of 5.3 million in client financial gain by our welfare rights team. These are just some examples of the case studies in the spotlight of an innovation chapter of the report. Going forward, there's a greater emphasis on integrating our ambitions to promote the real living wage in our new economic wellbeing strategy and ensure that we engage with the business community to find out how best to support them to provide fair work and good jobs. There's a continuing focus on addressing barriers to employment for parents, access to affordable housing, childcare and transport. And as you know, we do remain committed to delivering a one council, whole family, whole community approach in terms of our multidisciplinary cross-organisational working at a locality level. Efforts at closing the poverty-related attainment gap will continue and our work will increasingly be focused on enabling families to move from crisis interventions to prevention and more sustainable livelihoods. As I continually say, not one service, agency or indeed community can tackle child poverty alone. We have a collective and individual responsibility to work together. The collective commitment of staff, elected members and our many partners will therefore continue to be key. Just briefly before we move to questions, I'd like to highlight that a new national best practice directory has recently been launched. And of the 20 examples of best practice within that, 3 are from here in Perth and Kinross: the Task Force, our Children's Scorecard and the PKC Financial Insecurity Fund. Professor John McKendrick, who you know has done work with us over the years, has also reviewed the local child action report, and he's highlighted some key strengths. He's noted a firm commitment from us in terms of using data effectively to inform our practice. He's noted that partnership working is embedded with clear mechanisms created to sustain this work going forward. He's noted the long-term actions have a clear place at the heart of the strategy, so therefore we're not just focusing on the short-term immediate goals, we've got a long-term strategic approach. And he also commented on the clarity of the simplified set of 3 overarching goals within that sharpening sort of deeper focus in terms of the actions that sit beneath them. I've got a number of colleagues on the call. In case you've got any more complex questions, he'll be happy to support.
Thank you very much. Our first question is from Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Convener. And my question's regarding paragraph 4.9 in the report and the establishment of multidisciplinary teams working in localities. And I know that there is a meeting scheduled on Friday for Perth City Centre members, but I wondered if we could get a foretaste of what we're going to hear on Friday to committee today, because I think one of my big concerns is over the pace of the establishment of multidisciplinary teams across Perth and Kinross. We seem to have been talking about Highland, Perthshire, Blairgowrie and Crieff for a long time and haven't got beyond that, whereas you know the greatest incidents of poverty are in the Perth City Centre within the inner ring road and in areas of the New Merton housing estate, and we have all voluntary sector agencies and council services based in Perth. So what are we doing with regard to getting the multidisciplinary teams off the ground to start working in the city centre?
Okay, I think first of all that commitment in terms of multidisciplinary cross-service working is absolutely key. In terms of poverty, child poverty, tackling poverty and child poverty is a clear corporate commitment, and as part of the day job, it is the responsibility of many officers across all services, welfare rights teams, housing teams, education and children's services, right the way across. We have had probably more of a focus in supporting multidisciplinary working within Highland, Perthshire, Letham, Cooper Angus. The next two focuses are absolutely Crieff and the city centre, and we have got meetings planned with ward members over the course of the next 2 to 3 weeks. What I would say in terms of the city area, we have got extremely good, and I'm looking across at Elaine here, extremely good multidisciplinary working in the city centre already. We've got staff co-located in Puller House, we've got the adult social work team, we've got the housing teams, we've got our welfare rights teams, and cross multidisciplinary working, I think, is already very effective within these areas. What we will do is we will step in as a support team, and I'm looking across at Carol and my colleague Paul on the call, to really have that kind of sharpened focus on child poverty to sort of get to the nub of the some of the issues around and about child poverty. So please be assured that, you know, in all localities, teams are already working in a very collaborative sort of multidisciplinary way. The work that we are doing is just to ensure that the focus is as sharp as it should be. The new strategic lead arrangements and the priorities for strategic leads through the new leadership review will also support, I think, the pace round and about some of this work over the course of the next few months.
Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Convener. My question relates to paragraph 4.1, where it says that we do not, however, know the impact the cost of living crisis has had on children, as this data has not yet been gathered. I'm just wondering what the time frame is for actually collecting that data. Thank you.
That data will be available, I think it's round and about October 24.
Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Convener. Partly in response to Councillor Barrett's question, my initial question's been answered, and I welcome the fact that there is going to be a meeting with ward councillors in Crieff to Goverstreathern on the, I think it's the 19th of January. But could I just ask Claire Mailer, with the, and there's poverty, child poverty, not just in Perth, but in places like South Crieff, other parts of Perth and Kinross. But with the multidisciplinary teams, what we're looking at is initially looking how we go forward, but this is an ongoing process, and that it is very much part of the transformation programme. And secondly, just with this, I'm right in saying, also ties in with our asset management, I think, paper coming at next council meeting, the whole question of co-location. If you can put your housing officers, social work, if possible, police and other agencies together, then you're going to get much more effective results.
Yes, absolutely. So it is an ongoing process, and absolutely we kind of set out in terms of some of the multidisciplinary working. I think the initial plan was over 5 years. What I think we will do, given the questions today about kind of what next, I think is share the plan for the rollout. And I think colleagues on the call will take a note of that. It is one of our transformation projects, and it absolutely does form part of the one public estate, the one council approach in terms of the one public estate work that we're doing. So you will be aware of some of the work that Stephen Crawford is leading on in the Pitlochry area, and that absolutely will be a continuation of us really looking at the assets that are available at a very kind of local community level, how we can better utilise them to sort of bring together teams and indeed services, community asset transfer where appropriate, any of the buildings that we no longer requires. So doing that overall assessment in terms of what is needed, what's available within the area, and how we can consolidate the property portfolios as well.
Thank you.
Councillor Leishman.
Thanks, Convener. In 4.11 in the paper, it says promoting and encouraging local employers to follow the principles of the Scottish Government's Fair Work Action Plan, including the Real Living Wage and Scottish Business Pledge, To what extent can and does PKC promote and encourage this and go beyond making it more than just a preferred action of ours?
Okay, thank you for your question. What I would add is that this is one of the the key actions that actually sits within our corporate plan as well, and sits certainly as a key focus of a number of teams, not least under the poverty work, but also in terms of our economic wellbeing and development work. The key action there is really promoting and encourage local employers. And the related activity is for us to really adopt that inclusive growth approach within our procurement processes wherever possible, using the community benefit clauses within our contracts, and indeed by encouraging payment of the Scottish Living Wage. We influence employment rates and average earnings by supporting businesses and individuals directly, so through the Business Gateway, GrowBiz, and indeed through the local employability partnerships. So they've got a key focus on this area of work. And I think more widely, at a very senior and indeed frontline level, we are engaging with the businesses across Perth and Kinross. Myself, and other colleagues and the Chief Executive have met with a range of businesses, and indeed through the local city action partnership, we're meeting with them to really ensure that they've got heightened levels of awareness of paying decent wages and indeed the impact of that on their employees. Now, I'm just having a wee look here because I think we have I think we've got an increase, yes. I think there's been an increase recently in terms of employers who are signed up as living wage employers across Perth and Kinross. So there has been an improvement within that. I'll find the figure and I will share that with you.
Councillor Brown.
But three short ones. Give me a budget. A break if you want, but the first one is to test my memory. We've in 4.1 we mentioned 5,914 children in poverty, which is a terrible figure. But I seem to remember going from memory that it was around about 4,000 from a previous paper, and that would be a sizable jump.
Previous figure was 5,155.
Sorry, I seem to think somewhere in the background it was over 4, but never mind. Memory's failing, it's an age thing, I suppose. Second thing is very little mention about education. And education is a way out of poverty for children. I say the report doesn't mention much about encouraging children to get a good education. Is that something we do?
Yeah, so just to confirm, the figure was 5,155, absolutely. In terms of education, I don't know if many of you have drilled down to the children's scorecard, and you will see within there quite a lot of detailed information in terms of the work that our colleagues within education and children's services are undertaking. That again sits within probably some of the information with our annual performance report, but there's a real and clear focus in terms of closing the poverty-related attainment gaps. So there's some key information. I don't know if Margaret is on the call. I don't think I've got education colleagues on the call, but Margaret, it might be helpful if you could give a wee bit of an overview.
Yes, Claire, thanks. So the Raising Attainment strategy has been implemented by colleagues in education and children's services, and that is really about ensuring that children who come from impoverished backgrounds are given additional help and support to create a level playing field, so that they get the same chances and opportunities as other children. Within that, a lot of the work around that is funded through the Pupil Equity Fund, and the Pupil Equity Fund, I'll find out and follow up exactly how much it is, but I think it's around about 1.8 million that's distributed across both primary and secondary schools, and the head teachers in those schools work with their colleagues to develop, if you like, a plan which is appropriate to the children and the community that they're supporting. And that basically ensures that the additional support needs of children from impoverished backgrounds are met. But I'd be more than happy to follow this up with a more detailed written response.
Thank you for that. And the last question, very simply, do we help families with their budgets? Because I've been out with local housing teams in the past and met people, and it's quite obvious they just cannot cope with modern life, I suppose, to put it that way. But do we help them control their funds and get it in the right way so they spend the money in the best possible way?
Yes, absolutely. And many of our frontline officers, I know that Lynn and Nick are on the call, they've undertaken extensive sessions with many frontline services, and indeed some of our other partners. Citizens Advice Bureau do some fairly sort of in-depth work, as well as you've described our frontline housing workers.
Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Convener. Convener, there's loads of really fantastic stuff in this report in terms of commitment from officers and partners, and where we're making a difference on the ground. But I think the important point that just came out of Councillor Braun's questions was that despite everything that we're doing, we're still going in the wrong direction. That child poverty has increased by about 20% over the last year. Now, not all of that was within our control, but I think one of the really dispiriting aspects of this report is on page 29 of the report, page 199 of the pack, and that's the 3 challenges that are listed there. And I think in the context of child poverty increasing by 20%, then we really need to pull the finger out and stop messing about with regard to GDPR. If GDPR is a significant problem preventing the council and the NHS from tackling poverty in our area, then we need to get the people that are responsible for putting those barriers in front of us, in front of this committee or in front of somebody, and get those barriers overcome, because it's simply not acceptable. Now, my question is, what is the Child Health Commissioner going to do about that? Do we need to invite the new Commissioner along to a special meeting of this committee? Because if we don't get page 29 sorted out, then we're never going to turn the dial on child poverty in Perth and Kinross. All other areas of public service are able to share data on the basis of public good outcomes, and this sort of thing shouldn't be a barrier between the council and NHS.
Well, I agree. I don't think you phrased that as a question, so we'll leave it as.
Well, can we invite the Children's Commissioner along, plus the data officers of the council and NHS, so that we can get to the bottom of this? It's something that we've been talking about and accepting glibly for probably 20 years, and we just can't do that with the way that child poverty is going on.
I'm happy to engage with. Yeah, of course you can.
I think from my own point of view, absolutely, that will be one area that I will take up with the Commissioner, the new Commissioner. What I would also like to, I was going to say reassure, but I think given, as you say, it's been an ongoing issue, what I would say is we had one of our recent workshops that we had Scottish Government colleagues along at that meeting. It was raised by frontline officers as an ongoing barrier and concern. Scottish Government colleague who was there absolutely noted, and I think gave a response and said that this absolutely is an area of priority. There is a working group, and I had a follow-up call with the officer a couple of weeks later, and it will continue to be, I think, an area that we will push at every opportunity.
Thanks, Convener. I think we also need to be in a position where we actually can report on the target families. That's a nonsense as well. We're saying that we know who the target families are, we know the families that we need to work with, we know where they live, but suddenly we can't report on them. Oh, come on.
No, I agree with you. I think that things work best when we can work in partnership and share information for the benefit of people who are in need. So I do not disagree with you and your comments. Bailey McLaren.
Thank you. I echo my colleagues' comments. Maybe my question is maybe slightly sort of shadowed by Councillor Barrett's comments, but the number that we're identifying, there is an increase in child poverty numbers. Is that partly to do with we are more aware of what was on the ground? than you know, have we got a mixture of a situation here? Yes, there is an increase, but is it that we have become a lot more aware through our works in the past year?
I think it's a combination of the two things. I mean, absolutely. I think there has been, you know, a general sort of increase, and I think, you know, note what the report says. I mean, figures have largely remained sort of static. There were different reporting mechanisms, and during and after COVID, there were some real sort of challenges there. But yes, our reporting, and we're doing much, much more here. And you can see that in terms of the feedback that we've had about the work and some of the practice that we're doing to sort of really identify child poverty across the area, but also at a local level, community level, I think is helping enormously. And we do see some increases. I mean, we've seen some increases or significant increases through Lynn and Nick's service areas. A lot of that is because there is the increased need and demand, but also a lot of that is because there's increased awareness, signposting and availability. So a combination of factors. But yeah, I mean, largely child poverty is remaining stable across Scotland. I know our figures, so I think just to sort of emphasise that within the report, we've had an increase in the numbers slightly, but generally poverty figures, child poverty figures are remaining stable, which would indicate all of the mitigating actions that we are taking are working. That is not to say that we can be complacent or there's more that needs to be done.
No further questions, so I will move this paper. Child poverty is often hidden within our society, and it's an agreed priority of this council to tackle child poverty and its effects. Therefore, I am pleased to move this paper for this year's Local Child Poverty Action Plan, which sets out the work we have engaged in over the past year and our future focus on mitigating the effects of child poverty. This is the 5th Child Poverty Action Plan, which we're being asked to note. It reports on what has been a very challenging year for all, and our cost of living crisis response is a key feature of the report. The work of the Anti-Poverty Task Force is gaining momentum with recruitment of a project manager. In terms of child poverty, we know that the 2020 5,194 children in Perth and Kinross were living in poverty, so at least 1 in 5 children or greater are living in poverty. Concerns are growing. Numbers of children experience deep or very deep poverty. It's important that whilst we are caught up in the immediate need and response to the cost of living crisis, we must not lose sight of our statutory duty and moral obligation to work to reduce child poverty over the longer term. I am pleased to know that this report takes a strategic approach implementing year two of a 4-year phase into some of the underlying causes specific to Perth and Kinross. It's also good to see that this plan has been informed by lived experience from residents in the area, real people sharing real experience of low paid work, childcare issues, transport problems, accessing services and more. Although this feedback is often difficult to hear, these voices must be at the heart of our approach, telling us what works and what doesn't work. The second children's scorecard showed that progress has been made in most of the areas identified by priority parents, but this also identified those areas where further work is required. These have now been factored into ongoing work plans and will be addressed in the coming year. It's important to recognise that council officers, elected members, community groups and individuals working alone cannot solve this wicked issue of child poverty, but by working together, pooling our resources and expertise, we can and must reduce the number of children who live in poverty within our area. I therefore move the report. Can Councillor McCall to the second report, please?
Happy to formally second the report, convener.
Do members have any comments? Ms. Palmer, I'll take your comment first, please.
Hello, I was so interested, to hear about the poverty report there. Just to take a moment to say that I had nothing until my late 20s because my wages were so low. I was still at home, and then I moved away and took work where there was tied accommodation, and then I started to save, and it took a few years, but saving became the thing. That's the way out. But you could, as a young person, maybe just finishing school, the only way to do that early on in your adult life is to take a job with tied accommodation. Now, I know this is a bit old-fashioned, and like, who does it anymore? But there's farms, lots of farms out there, and there's lots of farming on the TV, and there's hotels with hotel staff in accommodation, and they won't pay any rent. They get their meals as well. So it's a way to make a start. I mean, I know I'm talking about the older child or young adult, but there's hope for them if they can get into the way of saving as well. And then by the time they're in their 20s, if they don't want to do hotel work any longer, they'll have a little nest egg. And the nest egg is, my dad told me he could never have had his first car if he hadn't saved. And that's right back to the 1940s. He saved to buy his first car. So I know that saving doesn't get mentioned at all, but tied accommodation and saving go together, and employment then as well.
Thank you very much for your comments. I think you're correct. I think that if your housing accommodation, your heating, and sometimes your food costs are covered by your employer, you're also paid, then of course these are the demanding aspects of modern life which people are currently now finding unaffordable, and the actual money they have coming in doesn't even cover the costs. Hence the need for us to step in. So thank you very much for your comments. Councillor Leishman.
Thank you, Convener. It's just a brief comment, really. I would like to recognise the amazing work that's been accomplished by council officers through these various initiatives, and it needs to be recognised and applauded. It cannot be underestimated the positive impact this has had on vulnerable and hard-pressed individuals and families throughout the Perth and Kinross area, and in particular the welfare rights teams achieving a client financial gain of 6.5 million in social security benefits. So that's truly excellent work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor McPherson. The real Councillor Leishman. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Convener. And I would, before I start my comment, I would like to apologise to you and to fellow committee members, but especially Bailey McLaren, for my alarm going off. I have to admit it was for a medical reason, which is no excuse. I thought we'd have been long since finished before now, so I'm sorry for that. But yeah, thank you, Convener, and to officers for the report and for answering the questions in such detail as well. Praise is deserved rightly for our welfare teams and all the hard-working officers across many departments that do so much to help people across our wards. Please accept my and my colleague Bailey Bailey's gratitude for that. And if I can be indulged from a ward perspective briefly, both Leitham for All and the Love Leitham Commission have done and continue to do relevant and vital work. And what Leitham for All do doesn't just stop at the boundary of Perth City North. For example, there will be hundreds of Christmas dinners and toys being distributed all over Perth and Kinross next month. But obviously there is bad news too. What a basket of inequalities we have. The ultimate societal inequality is life expectancy. Pretty much throughout the 20th century, life expectancy expanded. But since 2010, though, this expansion has sadly stalled. And everyone is aware of what economic policy was introduced then. And specifically in Scotland, for the last 3 years, we have seen a reduction in how long people are expected to live. Simply, the greater the deprivation, the lower the life expectancy. Also, the greater the poverty, the less likely the child will do well at school. So the less likely the chance of getting a job that gives the income required to even merely survive. Although it's good to hear progress is being made, we still have 8,000 workers not getting paid the real living wage. Perth and Kinross is still, shamefully, a low-wage economy. A lack in the availability of suitable jobs, inflexible hours, high cost and low availability of childcare, as well as stifled wages persist, as well as the enduring gender pay gap. And the cost of living crisis still raging on and making the essentials unaffordable. Plus the extra costs incurred by some who live in rural areas or live with a disability. And of course, there are extra consequences of having a low income. Many people then don't have access to a bank account and the chance to set up direct debits, effectively meaning budgeting is just not an option, all leading to escalating poverty. And touching on the topic of people budgeting, if you don't have enough to even cover the basics required to survive, then there's nothing left there to cut. There's nothing able you can cut back on from some imaginary budget. never mind the luxury of being able to save. And with an estimated 58,000 people struggling financially, that's 1 in 3 people in Perth and Kinross. There is much work needing done. And the repeated reduction in local government funding means we will continue to see heartbreaking increases like 5155 become 5914 children living in poverty, even with the outstanding work council officers and community organisations do.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, convener, and I realise that my questions did stray into comments previously, so I'll try and be brief this time, because I do think that there is a tremendous amount of really good work going on in this report. I think page 164, section 4.14 demonstrates, early intervention and prevention in action. It demonstrates joined up service delivery, and it demonstrates, the focus on employment. And I think Lynn makes a really strong point that one of the routes out of poverty used to be into employment, but now, as Councillor Leishman points out, the sad reality is that we have alarming levels of in-work poverty in our area as well. So there are no easy answers to this. I think what really encourages me about the plan is the amount of space and volume of the report that's given over to NHS Tayside. I think acknowledging that they have a key role as an anchor organisation, and I would say more than just as an anchor employer in our area. They should be considered as an anchor organisation in the same way that we consider ourselves as one, and people like Letham for All, Broke Not Broughton, and a whole host of other organisations in our community, and we need to ensure that they fulfil their obligations under such a role as well. So I'm encouraged by aspects of this this report, because we are trying to do the right sort of things, but I think the big concern is our ability to scale up at pace and at scale, because I appreciate that we can't do everything everywhere all at once, but I do think we need to be moving faster than we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCall.
Thank you, convener. And first of all, actually, I want to endorse what Councillor Barrett has said about NHS Tayside as an anchor organisation, and I think that I've already raised that with internally about how we can work more collaboratively with NHS Tayside in our common pursuit, particularly in relation to health inequalities and public health. I also just wanted to maybe clarify a point that Councillor Leishman made about Letham for All. Although the building may be located in Perth City North, it's never been just about Perth City North. It's an organisation for really all of Perth City, but definitely Perth City South as well. And the key point I want to make here is that one of the things that Letham for All has been instrumental in doing is not only enabling people locally within its own geographical area, but also in helping other community groups elsewhere to benefit from the experience and the work that they've done, and so empower other local communities. So I would certainly urge elected members and community groups, if they have a good idea and they see it being done somewhere else, not to be afraid to come forward and ask, either through council officers or directly, so that they too can become empowered and replicate some of the good work that's been done here locally. Thank you, convener.
Thank you very much. Can we approve this paper? Item 9 on our agenda is a community investment fund. Can I have Lee Haxton to very quickly, lightly, briefly introduce the paper? I think we're all aware of the community investment fund and etc. So.
Thank you, convener. Councillors, this report summarises the funding decisions made by ward panels for the 2023-24 Community Investment Fund, and also provides an update on the Green Living Participatory Budgeting Project. It's split into 4 main sections. Section 4 provides the background on the delivery of Community Investment Fund since its inception and summarises the changes we made for this year's round of funding. Section 5 sets out the number of applications received in each council ward and the value of those applications. Section 6 summarises the funding decisions made by ward panels, with ultimately 96 awards made totalling around £383,000. And Section 7 sets out the timescales for the Green Living Participatory Budgeting Project, which opened for bids at the end of October and closes on Friday the 15th of December. happy to take any questions.
I don't have any questions. I didn't really expect to have any questions, so I will move the report. This report sets out how ward panels have used their SIF allocations across communities in Perth and Kinross. The report also confirms the timescales for the Green Living participatory budgeting project, and I would urge members to encourage groups in their wards to come forward with proposals for this participatory budgeting, because the closing date for applications is the 15th of December. SIF and PB demonstrates this council's continued commitment to supporting community empowerment and providing opportunities for local people to determine how council funds are used to support community-led initiatives. We are asked to note the funding decisions taken by the ward panels approve the carry forward of £85,500 to support community projects in those wards where the underspends have arisen, and note the progress made to date with the new Green Living participatory budgeting project. Now, if Councillor recall the second, please.
Apologies, convener. Yes, I'm more than happy to second the report.
Do members have any comments? We have Councillor Barrett for a comment.
Yeah, thanks, convener. Again, I think the report demonstrates how successful the Community Investment Fund is in kind of providing foreign seed funding for important local initiatives. I do have some concerns regarding the disaggregation of the Perth City Fund into the 3 city centre wards. I think if you look at page 208 of the pack and the table in section 5.1, you can see that only £14,000 out of £45,000 was requested in Perth City South. Perth City North basically awarded almost the whole of their allocation, and applications were almost double the funding available in Perth City Centre. And I think that there was always going to be a problem with disaggregating the City Centre fund, because all the third sector organisations based in the City Centre applied to the City Centre, despite the scope of their projects being much wider than just the City Centre ward. So I do think that there's something that we need to look at there. I think there needs to be a discussion with Perth City members as a whole again, and just see if we think that the way that this has panned out this time is the best that we can do, or if we need to be tweaking the application process and the funding award process, so that it isn't all falling on the shoulders of Perth City Centre.
I think this committee made the decision to allow the Perth City councillors to meet and discuss and take this forward, and I think that David will be able to support you meet further to look at the pros and cons of the different ways that you've managed to do this to take forward what you feel is important for your communities. But obviously with the Perth City South, the monies that haven't been allocated will still be there for them to use in the future going forward, and maybe some encouragement for groups within Perth City South to do so will be helpful. Next comment from Councillor Braun.
Yeah, very quickly. Yeah, thanks, convener. Very quickly, just to say that I think this continues to be a popular programme. Looking at the table on page 208, it was well oversubscribed. I know our ward was all the money was used. It's community empowerment in its truest form, I think. I think my experience of chairing the panels was always that the people who were actually making the decisions enjoyed it. They felt part of the community. I know you did this one, and I hope that was the same for you. That the people on the panel enjoyed it, and it was just to say I hope this can continue. I think it's a perfect way of empowering the community to make decisions that are important to them. Thank you.
I think it helps encourage communities engage. They feel empowered to help with other communities. Councillor McCall.
Thank you, convener. Just really in response to Councillor Barrett's comments, I think the table that gives the summary table that started the report doesn't actually reflect what was awarded, I don't think, in Perth City South in particular. And I do know that in previous iterations of the Community Investment Fund, Perth City South was indeed usually oversubscribed. I don't know whether the aggregation caused some community groups not to apply in the past, and perhaps that may be the comment again, but I think it's a bit early in this process to be starting to review it all over again. Thank you.
I have no further comments. I'm very happy to approve this paper. Right, we move on to the last paper of today, item 10, which is the outcomes from the Affordable Housing Members Officer Working Group. Can I have Elaine Richards, Service Manager, to introduce this report?
Thank you, Convener. Councillors, the purpose of this report is to provide an overview and an update to members on the work progressed by the Affordable Housing Members Officer Working Group and seeks approval that the group has met its overall aim. The Perth and Kinross Council Committee meeting on the 21st of December 2022, approval was given for the re-establishment of the Affordable Housing Member Officer Working Group, and it was agreed the group would meet for a maximum period of 6 months. Terms of reference was agreed along with an area of topics to be included within a work plan. The group first met on the 27th of March 2023, and areas such as updates on the developer contributions and affordable housing supplementary guidance 2020, modular and off-site construction options, rent setter proposals, including the financial viability model to support the development of social housing, were some of the key areas discussed. The Affordable Housing Member Officer Working Group has provided officers with the opportunity to discuss and debate various key priorities and challenges faced with the delivery of affordable housing. It's also enabled members to provide supportive and constructive feedback on the delivery of key areas within the housing service to ensure the best outcomes are achieved for tenants and communities within Perth and Kinross. Thank you.
Do we have any questions? What about it?
Thanks, Convener. It wasn't clear to me from the recommendations of the report whether the Affordable Housing Member Officer Working Group is now to be stood down or disbanded. So it would be useful to know if that's the plan, and then I'll have a supplementary if your answers are yes.
I would say sort of yes. I would say that I don't think the group should stop. I think the group should stay in existence, but that we should meet when and if we have a topic that any member of the group wishes to raise. Officers can then arrange reports and arrange a meeting time for that. Obviously, if there are a number of items that come forward, like they did previously for the first iteration, then I think that yes, we would be able to set up a series of meetings to tackle those issues. Because we currently sit not with a list of issues to discuss, but should that, but I think basically what I'm saying is if a list comes in.
Thanks for that, Convener. I mean, I think the Affordable Housing Member Officer Working Group did a lot of really valuable work, and it was a useful space to have good discussions in. For me, moving forward, you know, the one of the highlights of the group was the work that it did around the rent setting and considering the parameters of rent rises and the sort of impact that would have on tenants and the business plan moving forward. And you know, I think it's essential that part of the group's work continues and will be, you know, entering into the rent setting cycle if we've not already anyway. So you know, there'll be some work for that group to be done between now and February. So.
Thank you, Convener. I mean, if it is the decision of this committee that they would like the MOG to continue, the MOG was established through council, and we would need, and that was for a 6-month period, so we would need to ask council to agree for the continuation of that. But I'm sure that could be added to a briefing note, as a briefing note for council for next week, if there is time to do that.
Barbara.
Thank you. I was pleased to see, and I found it first in SHIP. I was pleased to see about the member working group. I thought that was very good. All this extra discussion, the meetings they were having to broaden their thinking, because there'll be people who are councillors who are maybe new to housing. And so this is very important that this member officer working group continue, maybe with gaps every so often, but still, like, we can't just decide to stop it. And particularly right at the end, there was a mention about how they considered UK, other things going on in the UK and the European community. That was in the SHIP document. And it's right at the end of today's many pages. So very pleased to hear that councillors have considered how things are in the European community and other parts of the UK. So I'm very pleased about this officer working group, that it does continue, even if there are short breaks, you know.
No, I completely agree. I think as councillors, we come to the committee as newbies knowing very little about housing and the social wellbeing aspects, and we learn and learn. These ability for officers to explain things to us in much more detail is hugely important for the work of this committee, and taking forward and looking, as you said, at the opportunity for things in other countries, other aspects, other council areas, because other councils operate their housing services slightly differently and do different things. So I suppose where we can ask our daft questions and get sort of fuller explanations than you can within a 2-minute answer at a committee. So thank you very much for your comments. Councillor Braun.
Oh, thanks, Karina. But Councillor Barrett pretty much asked the question I was going to raise, and about the ongoing of the group. I think it benefited a lot of us. In Appendix 2, there's a lot of points here which will come back. So I'd like to think we can continue it. Perhaps a bit more formal than what you were suggesting, more fixed dates, but as and when necessary. But I'd like to think it's established there to be used when we need it. Yeah. Thank you.
So if we are going to move the paper based on the aspect that we will continue the MOG as an organisation, that we will meet when necessary, where there is business to be had, and that we will ask that be noted at full council and get their acceptance of our wish to continue the good work that's already happened. Is there no other comments? Do we agree that with the...
Agreed.
Agreed. Well, that's the end of business for today. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much for your attention and extra half hour of your time.